You have been trusting the life you fear more than the life you are living. They told you worry protects you, that fear prepares you, that imagining the worst means you are being wise. But if that were true, why does your soul feel so tired? Why does today feel heavy when nothing has happened yet? Why do you keep suffering from a future that has not even touched you? The truth is, the life you are fearing is only a shadow in the mind. But the life you are living is here, breathing, waiting, teaching, and guiding you back to peace. Buddhism reminds us that freedom begins when you stop bowing to every fearful thought and return to what is real. Tonight, you will learn to trust this breath, this moment, this unfinished road. Your mind will slow down, your body will soften, and the future will stop feeling like an enemy. This is not just a lesson about peace. This is a return to the life already holding you. Are you ready? Let's begin. Sometimes the mind becomes so busy trying to survive tomorrow that it forgets to live today. You carry conversations that have not happened yet, fear losses that have not arrived, and quietly prepare your heart for storms that may never come. Little by little, the present moment starts feeling invisible. But peace returns when you finally stop asking life to reveal the whole map before you take the next step. And that is where this journey truly begins. There is a silent suffering many people carry without even realizing it. It is the suffering of needing life to explain itself before they can trust it. They want guarantees before commitment, certainty before movement, proof before peace. They keep telling themselves, once I know everything will work out, then I will relax. But life has never worked that way. The road has always revealed itself one step at a time. This is one of the deepest teachings in Buddhism. The present moment does not need to explain itself in order to have value. A seed underground looks like nothing before it becomes a tree. Winter looks empty before spring quietly returns. In the same way, many parts of your life may feel confusing right now, but confusion is not proof that your path is wrong. Sometimes it simply means you are standing in the middle of your becoming. Fear always demands a full explanation. Peace does not. Fear says, what if this fails? Peace says, walk anyway. Fear says, what if things never improve? Peace says, this moment is still worthy of your presence. The human mind struggles deeply with uncertainty because it wants protection. It wants to predict every possible pain before it arrives. But the strange thing is that this attempt to avoid suffering often creates even more suffering. You begin living as if danger is everywhere. Your body stays tense, your thoughts never rest. Even beautiful moments become interrupted by silent fear. You drink coffee while worrying about next year. You sit with loved ones while mentally preparing for loss. You finally achieve something important, yet your mind immediately asks, but what if it disappears? This is why so many people feel exhausted without understanding why. Their body is living in the present, but their mind is constantly traveling into imaginary futures. Buddhism teaches something radical but deeply healing. It teaches that reality only exists here, not in tomorrow, not in the disaster your mind keeps rehearsing, not in the version of life fear keeps creating. Reality exists in this breath, this room, this step, this moment. And when you begin returning to this moment fully, something changes inside you. Your nervous system softens. Your thoughts slow down. You stop treating life like an emergency that always needs solving. There is a reason peaceful people often seem so calm even during uncertainty. It is not because they know everything will work out perfectly. It is because they stopped demanding certainty before allowing themselves to live. Many people postpone peace. They say, I will finally relax once my finances improve. I will enjoy life once I know the future is secure. I will rest once everything makes sense. But life keeps moving while they wait. Years pass inside mental tension. Opportunities disappear because fear convinced them they were not ready yet. Meanwhile, the present moment keeps whispering quietly, "I am here now. Please stop abandoning me." One of the saddest habits people develop is constantly leaving today emotionally. They are physically present but mentally absent. Their attention lives somewhere else, always later, always ahead, always preparing for what could go wrong. But the future has never once asked you to destroy today in order to protect tomorrow. This does not mean you stop planning or acting responsibly. Buddhism is not teaching passivity. It is teaching balance. Plan for tomorrow, but do not emotionally live there. Prepare wisely, but do not worship fear. Take care of your responsibilities, but do not let your mind become a prison of endless prediction. The present moment deserves your full attention because your life is happening here. A person can spend years waiting for clarity before taking action, but clarity often comes after movement, not before it. Think about how children learn to walk. They do not wait until they completely understand balance. They fall, wobble, adjust, and slowly discover stability through experience itself. Life continues teaching this same lesson in adulthood, but fear convinces us we need perfect certainty first. You do not. Some roads only make sense after you have already walked them. There are people right now grieving opportunities they never took because fear demanded impossible guarantees. Relationships they never entered, dreams they never explored, places they never visited, truths they never spoke aloud. They waited for fear to disappear first. But fear rarely disappears through waiting. It weakens through movement. Buddhist wisdom often compares life to crossing a river. You do not stand frozen at the shore demanding to see every current before stepping forward. You cross carefully, one step at a time, adjusting as the water moves around you. The present road teaches while you walk it. And strangely, many of the things you once feared never even happened. Think about how much suffering your mind has created over possibilities that never became real. Sleepless nights over conversations that went fine, anxiety over events that never arrived, fear over futures that disappeared before they ever existed. The mind can become a storyteller of suffering. This is why awareness matters so deeply. Awareness allows you to notice when fear is speaking instead of reality. Fear often sounds convincing because it speaks with urgency. It says, think about this now, solve this now, prepare now. But urgency is not always truth. Sometimes the wisest thing you can do is pause and ask yourself, is this actually happening right now? Very often the answer is no. You are simply standing inside an imagined future while ignoring the life already around you. This habit slowly disconnects people from joy. They stop noticing simple beauty because fear keeps their attention trapped elsewhere. They miss sunsets while worrying about retirement. They miss laughter while preparing for heartbreak. They miss ordinary, peaceful moments because their mind refuses to stay still long enough to receive them. Buddhism gently teaches that peace is not hidden in some perfect future. Peace is hidden inside presence itself. And presence is not complicated. It begins with noticing your breathing, noticing the warmth of tea in your hands, noticing the sound of rain, noticing the face of someone you love, noticing that right now, in this exact moment, you are still here. Life becomes softer when you stop treating every uncertain moment as a threat. There is also great humility in trusting the present road before it explains itself. Humility accepts that you cannot control everything. It accepts that life will always contain mystery. Some answers arrive slowly. Some chapters remain unfinished for years. Some experiences only reveal their meaning long after they happen, and that can feel uncomfortable for a mind addicted to certainty. But certainty has never truly existed anyway. People try desperately to secure life completely, yet life keeps changing. Jobs change, bodies age, relationships shift, seasons pass. The illusion of total control eventually breaks for everyone. Buddhism does not see this as tragedy, it sees it as truth. And truth, once accepted, becomes strangely freeing. When you stop demanding permanent certainty from life, you stop panicking every time change appears. You understand that uncertainty is not a mistake in existence. It is part of existence itself. This realization changes how you move through difficult seasons. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What is this moment teaching me?" Instead of resisting every unknown, you become more curious about life itself. Instead of collapsing every time fear appears, you learn to sit beside discomfort without immediately obeying it. That is real inner strength. Not becoming fearless, but becoming less controlled by fear. Even Buddha himself taught that suffering often comes from attachment. And one of the strongest attachments humans carry is attachment to certainty. We want fixed outcomes, guaranteed futures, permanent comfort. But life keeps reminding us that everything changes. The moment you stop fighting this truth, your heart becomes lighter. You no longer need every chapter to reveal its ending immediately. You no longer panic when life feels unclear. You stop measuring your peace based on how predictable your future looks. Instead, you begin trusting your ability to meet life as it comes. This is a much deeper kind of security. Most people search for safety outside themselves, but external life will always remain partly uncertain. Real peace comes from building an inner relationship with uncertainty itself. A quiet understanding that says, even if life changes, I will meet it one moment at a time. That trust changes everything. It allows you to rest again. It allows you to sleep without carrying tomorrow in your chest. It allows you to enjoy ordinary moments without mentally escaping them. It allows you to stop turning every unknown into a catastrophe before it happens. There is something deeply sacred about finally allowing yourself to be where you are, not 5 years ahead, not trapped inside yesterday, here. Many people believe spiritual peace means reaching some perfect emotional state where fear never appears again. But Buddhism teaches something more compassionate. Peace is not the absence of uncertainty. It is the ability to remain grounded even while uncertainty exists. The ocean still has waves, yet its depth remains calm. Your mind can learn this too. Thoughts will still come. Fear may still visit sometimes, but you stop treating every fearful thought like prophecy. You stop building your identity around anxiety. You stop assuming uncertainty means danger. Instead, you breathe, you observe, you return, again and again. This returning becomes a form of healing, and over time, you begin noticing something beautiful. Life was never asking you to predict everything. It was only asking you to participate honestly in the moment you are in. There are people who spend their entire lives mentally preparing for pain, only to realize they forgot to actually live. They waited for certainty that never arrived. They postponed joy until conditions felt perfect. They delayed peace until fear disappeared completely. But peace does not arrive when life becomes fully predictable. Peace arrives when you stop demanding that it must. Tonight, as you continue listening, let yourself loosen your grip on the future a little. You do not need to solve your whole life right now. You do not need every answer tonight. You do not need to carry every possible tomorrow inside your mind. The road beneath your feet is enough for now. Trust the step you can see. Trust the breath you are taking. Trust the life that is already here, quietly unfolding one moment at a time. Little by little, you begin to see that peace is not found by controlling the future. It is found by returning to the present without fear ruling your mind. But as soon as you try to rest inside the moment, another struggle quietly appears. The mind itself begins speaking. A single fearful thought can change the entire feeling of your day. One moment feels calm, then suddenly your mind whispers, "What if everything falls apart?" And your body immediately tightens, as if danger is already standing at the door. This is where many people unknowingly lose their peace, not because reality is attacking them, but because they believe every fearful thought that enters their mind. And Buddhism teaches something deeply freeing. A thought is not automatically the truth just because it appears. There are nights when the mind becomes louder than the world itself. The room is quiet, nothing dangerous is happening, yet inside, thoughts begin moving like a storm. Thoughts about failure, rejection, illness, loss, embarrassment, regret, uncertainty. The mind starts creating scenes that feel so real, your body reacts as though those scenes are already happening. Your heart beats faster, your stomach tightens, sleep disappears, and all of it began with a thought. This is why learning not to believe every fearful thought is one of the greatest forms of inner freedom a person can discover. Most people never question their thoughts. They assume that because a thought appeared, it must mean something important. But the mind produces thousands of thoughts every single day. Some are useful, some are wise, some are meaningless, some are distorted by fear, exhaustion, pain, trauma, insecurity, or old emotional wounds. Buddhism teaches that awareness means learning to observe thoughts without immediately becoming controlled by them. This changes everything, because the moment you stop treating every fearful thought like absolute truth, your relationship with your mind begins transforming. Fearful thoughts often speak with certainty. You are going to fail. Something bad is coming. You cannot handle this. People will reject you. You will never be okay. The strange thing is that the mind says these things with complete confidence, even when there is no evidence at all. Fear does not need proof to speak loudly. It survives through emotion, urgency, and repetition. And when fearful thoughts repeat long enough, they begin feeling real. This is why many people live inside emotional prisons that do not even exist outside their own mind. Their thoughts become so believable that they stop questioning them completely. But Buddhism invites you to pause and look deeper. Instead of asking, "How do I stop these thoughts forever?" it asks a different question. Must I believe every thought I hear? That question alone can begin changing your life, because when you truly look carefully, you begin noticing how unreliable fearful thinking often is. The mind predicts disasters that never happen. It creates stories about people without knowing their hearts. It turns uncertainty into catastrophe. It confuses possibility with certainty. A fearful thought says, "This could happen." Then anxiety changes it into, "This will happen." And the body responds accordingly. This is why fear can feel so convincing. Your nervous system reacts before wisdom has time to speak. The body does not always know the difference between real danger and imagined danger. If you repeatedly think about abandonment, failure, humiliation, or tragedy, your body begins carrying those emotional states as if they are already present. That is why chronic fear becomes exhausting. Your nervous system never fully rests. Buddhist awareness gently interrupts this cycle. It teaches you to notice thoughts without immediately climbing inside them. This is similar to sitting beside a river and watching leaves float by. Each leaf is a thought. Some are peaceful, some are painful, some are frightening. But awareness allows you to watch the leaf pass without jumping into the river every single time. Most people spend their entire lives jumping into every thought. A painful memory appears and they drown inside it. A fearful possibility appears, and they panic. An insecure thought appears, and they believe it defines them. But awareness creates space. And inside that space, wisdom finally has room to breathe. One of the greatest misunderstandings about spiritual peace is believing peaceful people have no fearful thoughts. They do. The difference is that they no longer worship every thought their mind produces. They understand that thoughts are weather, not identity. Some days the sky is clear, some days storms appear, but the sky itself remains larger than the storm passing through it. In the same way, awareness remains larger than the fearful thoughts moving through the mind. This understanding becomes life-changing during difficult seasons, because pain itself is already heavy enough. But fearful thinking usually multiplies suffering far beyond reality. A small uncertainty becomes mental catastrophe. A mistake becomes personal destruction. A difficult conversation becomes proof of future abandonment. Fear always exaggerates. And one reason it exaggerates so strongly is because the human brain evolved to detect danger quickly. Long ago, survival depended on noticing threats, but in modern life, this same survival system often becomes overactive. The mind starts treating emotional discomfort like physical danger. Someone does not reply to your message quickly, and the mind creates rejection. You make one mistake, and the mind predicts permanent failure. Your body feels tired, and the mind immediately fears illness. You feel uncertain about the future, and the mind starts painting worst-case scenarios. Fearful thoughts move fast because the brain believes it is protecting you, but protection becomes suffering when awareness disappears. Buddhism teaches that wisdom begins when you stop reacting automatically to mental fear. This does not mean suppressing thoughts. Suppression only strengthens them. The more you fight certain thoughts, the more attention you feed them. It becomes like trying not to think about a loud noise while constantly listening for it. Instead, Buddhism teaches gentle observation. You notice the thought, you breathe, you let it exist without instantly obeying it. This sounds simple, but it requires deep inner discipline. Because fearful thoughts crave immediate reaction. They want urgency, they want emotional panic, they want your full attention. Awareness quietly says, "Let me look more carefully first." And often, when you slow down enough, you realize the thought itself is not the problem. The attachment to the thought is the real source of suffering. A fearful thought enters the mind. That part is natural, but then the mind grabs onto it, repeats it, builds stories around it, predicts outcomes, creates emotional movies, and slowly a single passing thought becomes an entire emotional world. Many people suffer more from imagined futures than present reality. That is why mindfulness matters so deeply. Mindfulness returns you to direct experience instead of mental storytelling. Right now, perhaps your breathing is steady. Right now, perhaps you are safe. Right now, perhaps the disaster exists only inside thought. Mindfulness reconnects you to what is actually happening instead of what fear predicts could happen. This does not mean ignoring real problems. Buddhism never teaches denial. If action is needed, you take action. If responsibility exists, you handle it wisely. But fear often creates suffering long before any real action is even necessary. Some people spend years emotionally rehearsing tragedies that never arrive. They live in constant anticipation of pain. And sadly, this habit steals their ability to experience peace, even during beautiful moments. Fearful thinking disconnects people from life itself. You can sit beside the ocean while mentally drowning somewhere else. You can receive love while secretly expecting loss. You can achieve something meaningful, yet immediately fear losing it. Fear makes the mind incapable of resting, and when the mind never rests, the soul becomes tired. This is why Buddhist practice places so much importance on stillness. Stillness allows you to finally hear your thoughts clearly instead of being unconsciously dragged by them. Most people move so quickly through life, they never stop to examine the quality of their own thinking. But when you sit quietly, you begin noticing patterns. You notice how often fear repeats old stories. You notice how quickly the mind assumes danger. You notice how much suffering comes not from life itself, but from the interpretation of life. This awareness can feel uncomfortable at first, because it reveals how much fear has been quietly controlling your inner world. But awareness is also healing because you cannot change what you never notice. One of the deepest Buddhist truths is that thoughts are temporary visitors. No thought stays forever. Even the most painful mental storm eventually changes. But when you believe every thought completely, you become trapped inside temporary mental weather. A fearful thought may say, "You will always feel this way." But that thought itself has appeared and disappeared many times before. Everything changes. Thoughts change, emotions change, fear changes, life changes. This truth becomes incredibly comforting once deeply understood, because it reminds you that you do not need to panic every time difficult thoughts appear. You do not need to treat every wave as permanent. You can let thoughts move through you without building your home inside them. This is part of emotional maturity. A mature mind does not believe everything it thinks. It questions fear gently. It creates space before reacting. It recognizes emotional exaggeration. It understands that thoughts can be influenced by stress, loneliness, trauma, exhaustion, insecurity, and countless other conditions. This creates compassion toward yourself. Instead of attacking yourself for having fearful thoughts, you learn to meet them with patience. You stop saying, "What is wrong with me?" and begin saying, "Ah, fear is visiting again." That small shift changes the entire emotional experience, because now you are no longer fused with the fear. You are observing it, and observation weakens unconscious control. The Buddha often spoke about the importance of right view. Right view means seeing reality clearly instead of through distortion. Fear distorts reality constantly. It magnifies uncertainty. It shrinks hope. It predicts permanence during temporary moments. But awareness restores balance. You begin seeing thoughts as mental events, not commands. This becomes especially important in moments of emotional pain. After heartbreak, failure, rejection, or disappointment, fearful thoughts often become extremely convincing. The mind says, "You will never recover. You will always be alone. Your life is ruined." But these thoughts are usually emotional reactions, not objective truth. And if you can avoid fully identifying with them, healing becomes possible much sooner. Many people accidentally deepen suffering by treating temporary emotional thoughts as permanent life conclusions. Buddhism teaches patience during emotional storms, not passive waiting, but grounded awareness. A reminder that thoughts are not solid reality. They are passing mental formations. There is also incredible freedom in realizing you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness witnessing them. This difference matters deeply, because if you believe you are your fearful thoughts, every dark thought feels like your identity. But if you are the awareness observing thoughts, then thoughts become experiences passing through consciousness, not definitions of who you are. Clouds move through the sky, but they are not the sky itself. Fear moves through the mind, but it is not the entirety of your being. This understanding slowly creates inner stability. You stop collapsing every time anxiety appears. You stop assuming every fear deserves full attention. You become more grounded inside yourself. And strangely, the less you fear fearful thoughts themselves, the weaker their control becomes. Many people suffer twice. First, from life. then from fearing their own thoughts about life. But awareness softens this second layer of suffering. You learn that a fearful thought does not automatically require panic. Sometimes it simply requires patience, breathing, and gentle observation. There is also deep wisdom in realizing that not every thought deserves engagement. Some thoughts are like strangers knocking on the door of your mind. You do not need to invite all of them inside for tea. Some thoughts can simply be noticed and allowed to pass. This saves enormous emotional energy, because many people spend hours arguing internally with thoughts that were never worthy of serious attention in the first place. A random fear appears, and they begin mentally wrestling with it all day. But awareness learns discernment. It asks, is this thought helpful? Is this thought true? Is this thought creating clarity or unnecessary suffering? These questions create emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence creates peace. Over time, you begin trusting awareness more than fear itself. You realize thoughts are not masters. They are visitors. Some visitors offer wisdom. Some offer confusion. You can learn the difference. And perhaps one of the most healing realizations of all is this: you do not need to eliminate every fearful thought in order to live peacefully. You only need to stop surrendering your entire life to them. Fear may still speak sometimes, but it no longer becomes the voice guiding every decision. Awareness becomes stronger, presence becomes stronger, trust becomes stronger. And slowly, the mind that once felt like an endless battlefield becomes quieter, softer, and more spacious. Not because life became perfect, but because you finally learned that every fearful thought does not deserve your belief. Once you stop believing every fearful thought automatically, another truth slowly begins to reveal itself. Many of the lives you are terrified of living do not actually exist. They are mental shadows created by fear, uncertainty, memory, and imagination. The mind can create suffering so vivid that the body reacts before reality even arrives. A future that has never happened can still steal your sleep, your joy, your confidence, and your peace. And over time, people begin living as prisoners of shadows instead of participants in real life. This next step is about seeing those shadows clearly for what they are. There is a strange habit the human mind has developed over time. It often treats imagined pain as if it were already real. A possibility becomes a certainty. A fear becomes an identity. A shadow becomes a full reality inside the nervous system. And the frightening part is how convincing these shadows can feel. A person can fear losing people they still have, fear failure before even beginning, fear rejection before speaking honestly, fear embarrassment before trying something new, fear loneliness while surrounded by love, fear sickness while healthy, fear abandonment while deeply cared for, fear the collapse of a future that has not even been built yet. The mind paints scenes with such emotional intensity that the body responds as though those scenes are already unfolding. Heart racing, muscles tightening, thoughts spiraling, sleep disappearing, peace evaporating. Yet many times nothing dangerous is actually happening in the present moment. This is one of the deepest reasons human beings suffer emotionally. Not because life itself is always unbearable, but because the mind continuously creates frightening versions of reality and then emotionally lives inside them. Buddhism understands this deeply. It teaches that much of human suffering comes not from direct reality itself, but from mental attachment, interpretation, projection, and illusion. Fear thrives inside imagined futures. That is why the life you fear is usually a mind-made shadow. A shadow looks real from a distance. It can appear threatening, large, dark, overwhelming. But when light touches it properly, you realize there was never solid substance there in the first place. Fear works similarly. The mind creates mental shadows using uncertainty. It takes incomplete information and fills the empty spaces with worst-case scenarios. It assumes danger before understanding truth. It predicts endings before beginnings have fully formed. This is why fear rarely speaks calmly. Fear exaggerates because exaggeration helps it survive. It says, if you fail once, your life is ruined. If this relationship changes, you will never recover. If people reject you, you will be worthless. If you make the wrong decision, everything will collapse. Fear always speaks in extremes because the nervous system responds more strongly to danger than possibility. But Buddhist wisdom invites you to examine fear carefully instead of automatically obeying it. When you look deeply enough, you begin noticing how often fear creates suffering around things that are not actually present. There is no disaster in the room, no collapse happening right now, no rejection occurring in this exact breath, only thoughts creating emotional shadows. This realization can feel shocking because most people spend years treating fearful imagination as objective reality. The mind becomes so accustomed to anticipating danger that peace itself begins feeling unfamiliar. Some people even become uncomfortable when life is calm because their nervous system has adapted to emotional tension. Silence feels suspicious. Rest feels unsafe. Happiness feels temporary. They constantly wait for something bad to interrupt peace. This is what prolonged fear does to the mind. It trains the body to expect pain even during safe moments. And sadly, many people do not realize how much of their emotional exhaustion comes from mentally rehearsing futures that never arrive. They carry invisible tragedies every day, arguments that never happen, losses that never occur, failures that never unfold, humiliations that exist only in imagination. The body cannot easily distinguish between vividly imagined suffering and present suffering. That is why fearful thinking feels physically draining. The nervous system reacts to imagined danger with real chemical responses. Stress hormones rise, muscles tighten, breathing shortens, sleep becomes restless, energy decreases. Over time, people become exhausted by realities they are mentally creating themselves. Buddhism does not say this with judgment, it says it with compassion. Because the fearful mind is usually trying to protect itself. Most fear is not created because you are weak. It is created because the mind desperately wants safety. It wants certainty. It wants protection from pain. But in trying to avoid pain completely, the mind often creates ongoing suffering. This becomes especially clear when you look at how fear changes perception. Fear shrinks possibility. Fear makes the future appear smaller than it really is. A fearful mind sees closed doors everywhere. It sees danger in uncertainty. It sees catastrophe inside ordinary mistakes. It sees permanent ruin inside temporary discomfort. And perhaps most painfully, fear convinces people they are more fragile than they truly are. This is one of fear's greatest illusions. It tells you that if difficulty arrives, you will collapse completely. But human beings are often far stronger than fear allows them to believe. Think about your own life for a moment. There were probably moments you once believed would destroy you completely. Losses, rejections, uncertainty, painful endings. Yet somehow, step by step, breath by breath, you continued. Not perfectly, not without tears, not without struggle. But you survived moments your fearful mind once thought impossible to survive. This does not mean pain is easy. Buddhism never denies suffering. Instead, it teaches that suffering becomes heavier when the mind creates additional layers of fear around it. Pain says, "This hurts." Fear says, "This pain will never end." Pain says, "This situation is difficult." Fear says, "Your entire future is ruined." Fear expands suffering far beyond the present moment, and often it does so through shadows rather than facts. This is why awareness matters so deeply. Awareness shines light onto mental shadows. It asks gentle but powerful questions. Is this fear based on reality or projection? Is this happening now or only inside thought? Am I reacting to life itself or to a story about life? These questions interrupt unconscious fear patterns, because shadows lose power when examined carefully. A child may fear a shadow in the corner of a room until the light turns on and reveals it was only a chair all along. In the same way, awareness often reveals that many emotional fears are built from assumptions rather than truth. One painful conversation becomes, "Nobody loves me." One setback becomes, "I always fail." One uncertain season becomes, "My future is hopeless." Fear generalizes quickly, but reality is usually far more nuanced than fear admits. Buddhism teaches the importance of seeing clearly instead of seeing through emotional distortion. This clarity is not cold or detached. It is compassionate honesty. It allows you to experience life without constantly adding imaginary suffering on top of it. There is also something important to understand about the mind-made shadows created by fear. They often come from memory. Past pain leaves emotional fingerprints. If someone experienced betrayal before, fear may begin expecting betrayal everywhere. If someone experienced failure before, fear may predict future humiliation constantly. If someone grew up around instability, fear may struggle to trust peaceful moments. The mind tries to protect itself by anticipating repeated pain, but protection becomes imprisonment when old fear starts controlling present reality. Many people are no longer reacting to life itself. They are reacting to old emotional echoes. A current situation triggers an old wound, and suddenly the mind begins building shadows again. This is why healing matters. Not because healing erases memory completely, but because healing helps you stop confusing past pain with present truth. A healed mind becomes more capable of seeing reality as it is, instead of constantly filtering it through old fear. This creates emotional freedom. You stop expecting disaster in every uncertain moment. You stop assuming every ending means destruction. You stop carrying the emotional weight of imaginary futures everywhere you go. And perhaps most importantly, you begin reconnecting with reality itself. Reality is often far gentler than fear's predictions. Not always easy, not always perfect, but gentler than the mind's catastrophes. There is deep peace in finally realizing that you do not need to prepare emotionally for every possible disaster in order to survive life. Many people think constant worry makes them safer, but endless worry rarely prepares the soul wisely. It simply keeps the nervous system trapped in continuous anticipation. True preparation comes from presence, not panic. Presence allows you to respond clearly when life actually requires action. Fear exhausts energy long before action is necessary. This is why people consumed by anxiety often feel emotionally drained before anything has even happened. They are fighting shadows all day. Buddhist practice gently teaches the art of returning to direct experience. This cup of tea, this breath, this conversation, this sunset, this ordinary moment. Fear pulls attention toward imaginary futures. Presence returns attention to living reality. And living reality is usually much smaller and more manageable than fearful imagination. The mind says, "Your whole future is collapsing." Reality says, "Right now, you are sitting in a chair breathing." The mind says, "Everything is going wrong." Reality says, "This moment is difficult, but not every part of life is destroyed." Fear thinks globally, wisdom thinks clearly. This distinction matters enormously because fearful thinking often removes perspective completely. One challenge begins feeling like the entire story of your life. One uncertainty begins feeling endless. But reality keeps moving, life keeps changing, feelings keep shifting, situations keep evolving, and shadows disappear when conditions change. This is one reason Buddhism places such importance on impermanence. Impermanence reminds you that no emotional state lasts forever. Fear tells you painful feelings are permanent. Reality shows they move like weather. Storms pass, night becomes morning, wounds slowly heal, confusion eventually shifts, even grief changes shape over time. Impermanence does not erase pain, but it prevents fear from turning pain into permanent identity. A fearful mind says, "You will always feel this way." Wisdom quietly replies, "Everything changes." There is profound comfort in this truth, especially for people trapped inside emotional fear for long periods. You are not trapped forever inside your current mental weather. The mind-made shadows fear creates are not fixed realities. They are shifting experiences, and awareness slowly teaches you how to stop feeding them, because shadows grow strongest when constantly reinforced through attention. The more you mentally rehearse catastrophe, the more emotionally real it becomes. The more you repeat fearful stories internally, the more the nervous system memorizes them. But when awareness interrupts these patterns, the shadows weaken. Not instantly, not magically, but gradually. You begin noticing fearful thoughts without automatically building entire futures around them. You begin recognizing emotional exaggeration more quickly. You stop assuming every uncertainty is danger. You stop treating every uncomfortable emotion like proof that something terrible is happening. And slowly, space returns to the mind. This spaciousness is deeply healing because fear suffocates perspective. A fearful mind sees only survival. A peaceful mind can finally see beauty again. The sound of birds in the morning, warm sunlight through a window, a meaningful conversation, the comfort of stillness, the softness of ordinary moments. Fear disconnects people from these experiences because it keeps attention trapped inside imagined futures. This is why so many people miss their own lives while trying to mentally control what has not happened yet. They live beside beauty but cannot receive it. They live beside love but cannot trust it. They live beside peace but remain emotionally braced for disaster. And eventually, they become exhausted from carrying realities that were never real to begin with. Buddhism gently invites you to put down this invisible burden, not by pretending life contains no pain, but by helping you distinguish between actual reality and mental shadow. This distinction changes how you move through the world. You become less reactive, less consumed by prediction, less trapped inside imagined catastrophes. You stop feeding fear endless authority, and something surprising begins happening. Life starts feeling more open again, not because uncertainty disappeared, but because you stopped turning uncertainty into immediate emotional doom. There is also wisdom in realizing that the future itself is not your enemy. Fear often creates the illusion that tomorrow is waiting to punish you somehow. But tomorrow has not even arrived yet. The mind simply fills empty space with fearful projection. And what if the future contains support you cannot yet see? What if it contains healing, growth, unexpected kindness, new beginnings, peace you cannot currently imagine? Fear rarely predicts those possibilities. It focuses almost entirely on danger, but reality contains far more complexity than fear admits. Life has surprised you before in beautiful ways too. Unexpected friendships, moments of courage, new opportunities, healing after pain, strength during difficulty. The fearful mind forgets these truths because it becomes hypnotized by shadows. But awareness remembers. Awareness sees more clearly. Awareness notices that fear is often a storyteller, not a prophet. And this understanding becomes one of the most freeing realizations on the spiritual path. You do not need to live under the authority of every shadow your mind creates. You can acknowledge fear without worshipping it. You can experience uncertainty without collapsing inside it. You can move through life without constantly preparing for imaginary destruction. And perhaps tonight, as your breathing slows and your mind softens a little more, you can begin noticing how many fears were only shadows all along. Not solid reality, not destiny, not prophecy, just frightened thoughts passing through the human mind. As the grip of control slowly loosens, something else begins to reveal itself beneath the noise. Much of human exhaustion does not come only from fear of tomorrow. It also comes from the inability to accept today as enough. The mind keeps whispering that this moment is incomplete, that you should be further ahead, more successful, more healed, more certain, more productive. And because of that constant pressure, even ordinary days begin feeling like failures instead of life itself. But there is a quiet kind of freedom waiting for the person who finally stops fighting the present moment. There is a sadness many people carry that is difficult to explain. Their life may not be collapsing. Nothing terrible may be happening. Yet deep inside, there is a constant feeling that something is missing, something unfinished, something not good enough. They wake up already feeling behind. Behind financially, behind emotionally, behind spiritually, behind compared to others. Even peaceful moments become interrupted by an invisible pressure that says, this should be more. This pressure has become so normal in modern life that many people no longer question it. They assume constant dissatisfaction is simply adulthood. But Buddhism teaches something very different. It teaches that endless dissatisfaction often comes from the inability to fully arrive inside the life already happening. People keep postponing contentment. I will finally feel at peace once I achieve this. I will finally rest once I become that. I will finally enjoy life once everything improves. But the strange thing is that the mind rarely stops moving the finish line. One goal is reached, and another immediately appears. One problem disappears, and the mind quickly searches for the next thing to worry about. This creates a life where the soul is never allowed to fully rest. Even accomplishments lose their emotional warmth quickly because the mind immediately shifts toward what is still incomplete. And slowly, people become emotionally unavailable to their own lives. They stop tasting ordinary moments, stop noticing small beauty, stop feeling gratitude naturally, not because life contains no beauty, but because the mind keeps insisting that the present is insufficient. This is why letting today be enough is not laziness. It is spiritual maturity. It means learning how to stop emotionally starving yourself in moments that are already worthy of being lived. There is enormous quiet power in saying, this moment matters too, not because life is perfect, not because there are no goals left, but because your entire existence should not depend on some future version of reality before you finally allow yourself peace. Many people unknowingly treat life as preparation instead of participation. Everything becomes about later. Later when finances improve, later when healing is complete, later when the relationship changes, later when success arrives, later when fear disappears. But while they wait for this imagined future, real life keeps passing quietly around them. The tea grows cold, parents grow older, children grow up, bodies age, seasons change, moments disappear forever. And one day, people suddenly realize they spent years mentally absent from the very life they were trying so hard to improve. This realization can feel heartbreaking, because no future achievement can fully replace missed presence. Buddhism teaches that life itself is hidden inside ordinary moments, not only inside dramatic milestones, not only inside perfect outcomes, not only inside extraordinary success. peace often hides inside very small things: a slow morning, a deep breath, warm sunlight entering a room, a calm conversation, silence after rain, the feeling of being alive without needing to prove anything for a moment. But people miss these experiences constantly because the mind remains trapped inside striving. Striving itself is not always wrong. Growth matters, responsibility matters, purpose matters. Buddhism does not teach passivity or apathy, but there is a difference between healthy movement and endless emotional dissatisfaction. Healthy movement says, "I can continue growing while still appreciating today." Emotional dissatisfaction says, "Nothing is enough until I become someone else." That second voice creates deep suffering because it disconnects you from your own life. Many people secretly believe that if they stop pressuring themselves constantly, they will lose ambition. But often the opposite happens. Constant internal pressure exhausts creativity, damages peace, and weakens emotional clarity. The mind performs better when it is not constantly under emotional attack. There is wisdom in slowing down enough to fully inhabit the day you are already living. Not the fantasy version, not the future version. This one, the unfinished one, the imperfect one, the ordinary one. This is where life actually exists. A person can spend years chasing extraordinary moments while overlooking the quiet miracle of simply being alive, breathing, feeling, seeing, hearing, existing. Buddhist teachings often return to simplicity because simplicity reconnects people with reality itself. Reality is often simpler than the mind allows. Right now, perhaps there is food available, air entering your lungs, a bed to sleep in, someone who cares about you, a small moment of stillness, a chance to begin again tomorrow. But the dissatisfied mind ignores these things quickly because it has become trained to focus mainly on absence. What is missing? What is incomplete? What still needs fixing? This mental habit creates chronic emotional hunger. No moment satisfies fully because attention stays locked onto deficiency. And social comparison makes this even worse. Modern life constantly encourages people to measure themselves against others, other people's achievements, other people's appearance, other people's relationships, other people's lifestyles. This comparison slowly poisons presence, because now today is no longer experienced directly. It becomes evaluated constantly. Am I successful enough, attractive enough, productive enough, far enough ahead? And even if life is objectively meaningful, comparison convinces the mind it is still lacking. Buddhism gently interrupts this cycle by returning awareness inward instead of outward, not in selfishness, but in grounded presence. You begin asking different questions. Am I awake to my life right now? Am I fully here? Can I appreciate this moment without needing it to become something else first? These questions shift the nervous system out of constant deficiency, and slowly, gratitude becomes more natural again. Not forced gratitude, not pretending suffering does not exist, but honest appreciation for what is already here. This changes emotional energy profoundly, because gratitude and constant dissatisfaction cannot fully occupy the same mental space simultaneously. One notices enoughness, the other notices absence endlessly, and enoughness is deeply healing. Enoughness says, this meal is enough for tonight. This breath is enough for now. This step is enough for today. This moment does not need to become extraordinary to matter. Many people never learned this emotionally. They were taught that worth comes only through achievement, productivity, perfection, or constant improvement. So they developed an inner voice that never stops demanding more progress, more certainty, more proof, more accomplishment. But eventually the soul becomes exhausted from never being allowed to arrive anywhere emotionally. Even rest becomes guilt. Even slowing down feels wrong. Even peaceful moments become interrupted by the thought, I should be doing something else. This is one reason so many people struggle to truly relax. Their nervous system has become addicted to striving. Stillness feels unfamiliar. Enoughness feels suspicious. Presence feels unproductive. But Buddhism teaches that there is wisdom in stopping long enough to fully inhabit your own existence, not rushing through every moment searching for the next thing, not constantly turning life into a problem to solve, not measuring your worth every hour, just being. This sounds simple, but for many people it is incredibly difficult. Because modern life rewards endless motion, the mind becomes convinced that slowing down means falling behind. Yet what does behind even mean in a human life? Flowers bloom at different times, trees grow differently, seasons unfold uniquely. Nature itself does not compare constantly, only humans torture themselves this way, and much suffering disappears when comparison loosens its grip. You stop needing your life to look exactly like someone else's timeline. You stop treating your current season as failure simply because it looks different. You stop believing peace belongs only to people who have already arrived. Because the truth is, many people who appear successful externally still feel emotionally restless internally. Achievement alone does not create peace. A person can accomplish enormous things while remaining unable to enjoy ordinary existence. The problem was never only external circumstances. The problem was the inability to let the present moment be enough. This inability creates endless emotional postponement. People postpone joy, postpone rest, postpone appreciation, postpone peace, always waiting for a better chapter before finally allowing themselves to feel alive. But life is not only happening in future chapters, it is happening now. And perhaps one of the saddest things a person can realize is how many beautiful ordinary moments were emotionally abandoned while chasing some imagined perfect future. A peaceful breakfast ignored because of anxiety. A conversation missed because of overthinking. A quiet evening ruined by future fear. A beautiful season unnoticed because the mind stayed elsewhere. This is why presence matters so deeply. Presence restores intimacy with life, and intimacy with life creates peace naturally. When you fully taste food, listen carefully, breathe slowly, walk attentively, and remain emotionally available to ordinary moments, life becomes richer again. Not because circumstances changed dramatically, but because attention changed. Attention shapes emotional reality. A mind obsessed with lack experiences life differently than a mind capable of noticing quiet abundance. And abundance is not always material. Sometimes abundance is simply enough emotional space to appreciate being alive. Enough stillness to notice beauty, enough awareness to stop rushing past your own existence. There is also wisdom in understanding that today does not need to solve your entire life in order to matter. Some days are ordinary, some days are slow, some days contain confusion, some days contain healing that cannot yet be measured. The modern mind struggles with this because it wants visible progress constantly. But many important things grow invisibly for long periods. Roots grow underground before trees appear above the surface. Healing often unfolds quietly before external change becomes visible. Inner peace develops gradually. Not every meaningful day will look dramatic. And that is okay. A quiet day is not a wasted day. A peaceful moment is not meaningless because it produces nothing measurable. There is tremendous value in simply existing without constant internal warfare. The nervous system heals through moments of safety. The heart heals through moments of presence. The spirit heals through moments of enoughness. This is why letting today be enough becomes such powerful medicine. It interrupts chronic emotional striving. It softens perfectionism, it weakens comparison, it allows gratitude to breathe again. And slowly, life begins feeling more human, more spacious, more livable. You stop carrying the crushing pressure to become extraordinary every moment. You stop turning every day into a test of worthiness. You stop demanding impossible emotional perfection from yourself. Instead, you begin meeting life more gently. And gentleness is deeply transformative. A gentle mind notices beauty more easily. A gentle mind forgives mistakes more naturally. A gentle mind allows rest without guilt. A gentle mind does not constantly punish itself for being unfinished. This gentleness becomes especially important during difficult seasons. Sometimes survival itself is enough. Sometimes getting through the day with honesty and softness is already meaningful. But the perfectionistic mind rejects this truth. It says, you should be stronger, further ahead, doing more, healing faster. And this harshness creates additional suffering on top of existing pain. Buddhism offers another path. Compassion, not self-pity. Compassion, the willingness to stop treating yourself like a machine that must constantly produce value in order to deserve peace. You are already a living being, not a project that must earn existence. This realization changes how the heart experiences daily life. You stop asking every moment to justify itself through productivity or achievement. You begin allowing moments to simply exist. Tea can simply be tea. Rest can simply be rest. Silence can simply be silence. A walk can simply be a walk. Life becomes less emotionally complicated. And strangely, this simplicity creates deeper fulfillment than endless striving ever could. Because the soul does not actually crave constant achievement. It craves connection, stillness, meaning, presence, love, belonging. And these things are often available inside ordinary life long before perfection arrives. Tonight, perhaps you can stop demanding that this day become more than it was. Perhaps this breath is enough for now. Perhaps your unfinished healing is still worthy of compassion. Perhaps your imperfect life still deserves your full presence. Perhaps peace has been waiting quietly inside ordinary moments all along. Not hidden in some distant future version of yourself, but here, inside this very life you are already living. When you finally begin letting today be enough, the heart becomes softer. The pressure to constantly chase, prove, and control slowly starts fading. But then another truth quietly appears beneath the surface. Many people are not only tired because they reject the present. They are tired because fear has slowly trapped their entire life inside invisible limits. Possibilities once felt open, dreams once felt alive, curiosity once moved naturally through the heart. But somewhere along the way, fear began building walls around the mind, and eventually those walls started feeling like reality itself. There is a quiet tragedy that happens when fear becomes the main voice guiding a person's life. The world may still be open around them, opportunities may still exist, healing may still be possible, love may still be available. Yet internally, everything begins feeling smaller and smaller, not because life truly became impossible, but because fear slowly turned possibility into a prison. This prison is rarely visible from the outside. A person may still go to work, still smile politely, still function normally, still appear responsible and stable. But internally, they have stopped allowing themselves to fully live. They stop trying new things, stop speaking honestly, stop trusting people, stop risking vulnerability, stop following meaningful desires, stop believing change is possible. Fear shrinks their emotional world until survival becomes more important than living. And the frightening part is how gradual this process can be. Fear rarely imprisons someone overnight. It happens slowly, quietly, through repetition. One painful experience creates hesitation. One betrayal creates emotional guarding. One embarrassment creates silence. One failure creates self-doubt. And over time, the mind begins building protective walls around every vulnerable part of life. At first, these walls seem helpful. Avoid rejection, avoid disappointment, avoid uncertainty, avoid pain. But eventually, protection becomes confinement. The same walls that block pain also block joy, intimacy, growth, creativity, love, and freedom. This is why Buddhism speaks so deeply about attachment and fear. Fear often disguises itself as safety. But what humans call safety sometimes becomes emotional imprisonment. There are people who never fully love because fear tells them loss would destroy them. People who never pursue meaningful dreams because fear predicts humiliation. People who never rest because fear says slowing down is dangerous. People who never speak their truth because fear of judgment feels unbearable. And gradually, life becomes smaller than it was meant to be. Not because reality removed possibility, but because fear convinced the mind possibility was unsafe. One of fear's strongest powers is its ability to make imagined pain feel more important than potential meaning. A person may deeply desire connection, but fear whispers, "You will get hurt." They may desire creativity, but fear says, "You will fail." They may desire change, but fear says, "Stay where you are, at least this pain is familiar." And familiarity becomes mistaken for safety. This is one reason humans sometimes remain inside painful situations for years. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because uncertainty feels more frightening than familiar discomfort. Fear says, "At least you know this pain." The unknown becomes terrifying because it cannot be controlled fully. Buddhist wisdom gently challenges this fear-based way of living. It asks an important question. What kind of life is created when fear becomes your primary guide? Usually the answer is not peace. It is limitation, tension, emotional contraction. A life organized mainly around avoiding discomfort instead of experiencing truth. And while avoidance may reduce certain risks temporarily, it also reduces aliveness. Because meaningful life always contains vulnerability. Love requires vulnerability. Growth requires vulnerability. Healing requires vulnerability. Authenticity requires vulnerability. Even hope itself requires vulnerability. Fear tries to eliminate vulnerability completely, but when vulnerability disappears entirely, so does emotional openness. This creates a hidden loneliness inside many people. They protect themselves so thoroughly that nothing deeply touches them anymore. No deep connection, no real openness, no emotional freedom, only careful emotional management. And eventually the soul becomes tired of living behind walls. There is a difference between wisdom and fear-based avoidance. Wisdom says, move carefully. Fear says, never move at all. Wisdom allows discernment. Fear creates paralysis. Many people confuse the two. They believe avoiding all emotional risk is maturity. But Buddhism teaches that clinging tightly to emotional safety often creates suffering of its own, because life itself is movement, change, impermanence, flow. Trying to freeze life into total emotional predictability creates enormous internal tension, and tension slowly hardens the heart. Fear also changes how possibility itself is perceived. A peaceful mind sees multiple paths. A fearful mind sees only danger. This is why two people can face the same situation while experiencing completely different realities internally. One sees opportunity, the other sees catastrophe. One sees growth, the other sees humiliation. One sees uncertainty, the other sees doom. The external situation may be similar, but the relationship with fear changes everything. Fear narrows vision. This narrowing affects every area of life. Relationships become difficult because fear expects abandonment. Creativity becomes blocked because fear fears criticism. Rest becomes impossible because fear expects disaster. Decision-making becomes exhausting because fear predicts irreversible failure. The nervous system becomes trapped in constant emotional defense. And slowly, possibility disappears behind mental bars. Buddhism teaches awareness precisely because awareness interrupts unconscious fear patterns. Awareness allows you to notice when fear is reducing your life unnecessarily. You begin asking, am I truly unsafe right now, or am I emotionally conditioned to expect danger? Is fear protecting me wisely or imprisoning me? Have I mistaken emotional contraction for safety? These questions create enormous insight. Because fear often speaks with authority, even when its predictions are inaccurate. Many fears never happen. Many disasters imagined by the mind never arrive. And even when difficulties do appear, human beings are often far more resilient than fear predicted. But fear rarely admits this. Fear prefers emotional certainty over truthful complexity. It says, if you open your heart, you will suffer. But reality is more nuanced. You may suffer sometimes. You may also experience love, healing, connection, and beauty beyond what fear can currently imagine. Fear only tells half the story. This incomplete storytelling traps many people inside emotional prisons they do not recognize. They assume they are being realistic when they are actually being controlled by anxiety. And because fear feels emotionally intense, it becomes believable. The body reacts strongly. The mind overfocuses. The nervous system becomes alert. Everything feels urgent. But emotional intensity does not automatically equal truth. This is one of the most important lessons Buddhist awareness teaches. A thought can feel powerful and still be distorted. A fear can feel convincing and still be incomplete. A possibility can feel dangerous while secretly containing growth. Many important experiences in life initially feel uncertain. The first honest conversation, the first vulnerable moment after heartbreak, the first attempt after failure, the first step into change. Fear usually appears before meaningful expansion. This is natural. The problem begins when fear becomes the final decision maker instead of simply a passing emotional response, because then life becomes organized around emotional avoidance, and avoidance slowly weakens confidence. Each avoided experience teaches the nervous system, yes, this really was too dangerous. Avoidance temporarily reduces anxiety, but it strengthens fear long-term. This creates a painful cycle. The more fear controls decisions, the smaller life becomes. The smaller life becomes, the less confidence grows. The less confidence grows, the stronger fear appears. And eventually, even small risks begin feeling overwhelming. This is how possibility turns into prison. Not through one dramatic moment, but through repeated emotional retreat. Buddhism offers another path. Instead of organizing life entirely around fear reduction, it teaches presence, courage, and compassionate awareness. Not reckless behavior, not ignoring danger, but learning how to remain open without constantly retreating from uncertainty. This openness restores aliveness. You begin participating in life again instead of merely defending yourself from it. And participation changes the nervous system deeply, because confidence is not built through endless control. Confidence is built through direct experience. You survive difficult conversations. You survive mistakes. You survive uncertainty. You survive vulnerability. And slowly, the mind stops seeing every unknown as fatal. This is why courage and peace are deeply connected. Not because courageous people feel no fear, but because they no longer allow fear to completely imprison possibility. The Buddha understood something profound about human suffering. Attachment to comfort and certainty often traps people inside cycles of fear. They cling tightly to emotional security while life itself keeps changing. But peace comes through flexibility, not rigid control. Water survives because it flows. Trees survive storms because they bend. The rigid branch breaks first. Fear creates rigidity. Presence creates adaptability, and adaptability creates emotional freedom. This freedom is not external perfection. It is internal spaciousness, the ability to remain emotionally alive without constantly retreating into defense. There are people who look successful externally yet remain deeply imprisoned internally, afraid to disappoint others, afraid to fail, afraid to slow down, afraid to be seen honestly, afraid to change direction. Fear controls their choices even while the world praises them. Meanwhile, another person with fewer external achievements may feel deeply alive internally because they are no longer organized entirely around fear. This is why inner freedom matters more than appearances. Fear's prison is psychological before it becomes visible externally. And one of the saddest parts of fear-based living is how it disconnects people from their authentic self. Fear creates performance, masking, people-pleasing, emotional suppression, pretending. The true self slowly becomes hidden beneath survival strategies. This creates exhaustion because pretending requires constant energy. The nervous system never fully relaxes when authenticity feels unsafe. But authenticity is deeply healing, not because everyone will approve of you, they will not, but because truth creates internal alignment. And alignment creates peace. Fear says, hide who you are to stay safe. Wisdom says, living disconnected from yourself is its own form of suffering. This does not mean revealing everything carelessly to everyone. Buddhism values discernment. But it does mean recognizing how often fear silences the deepest parts of the human spirit. There are dreams people never speak aloud because fear mocks them first. Talents never explored because fear predicts failure. Conversations never had because fear expects rejection. Lives never fully lived because fear constantly says, not safe. And perhaps one of the most painful prisons fear creates is the prison of self-limitation. A person begins believing they are incapable of more, not because reality proved it fully, but because fear repeated it long enough. I could never do that. I am not strong enough. I will always be this way. My life cannot change. These thoughts become emotional walls, but thoughts repeated often are not automatically truth. Buddhist awareness helps reveal how identity itself can become shaped by fear-conditioned thinking. And once this conditioning becomes visible, transformation becomes possible. Because prisons built by thought can begin dissolving through awareness. Slowly, patiently, compassionately, you begin testing fearful assumptions instead of automatically obeying them. You notice how many limits were emotional predictions rather than objective facts. You stop allowing fear to define the entire future, and with time, possibility returns. Not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because the walls inside the mind begin weakening. This creates enormous emotional relief. Breathing deepens again. Curiosity returns. Hope feels possible again. The nervous system no longer treats every unknown as danger. And perhaps most importantly, life begins feeling open again. Not perfectly certain, not fully controlled, but alive. There is something sacred about rediscovering openness after years of fear. The world feels less narrow. The future feels less doomed. The heart feels less trapped. And you realize something important. Fear was never protecting your life as completely as it promised. Many times, it was simply preventing you from fully entering it. Tonight, perhaps you can notice where fear has quietly reduced your world, where possibility became avoidance, where caution became imprisonment, where survival became more important than aliveness. And perhaps very gently, you can begin loosening those bars. Not all at once, not through force, but through awareness, through breath, through small acts of courage, through the quiet understanding that life was never meant to be lived entirely behind emotional walls. Possibility still exists, even now, even after fear. Even inside this unfinished life, you are still learning how to trust. As fear slowly loosens its grip, life begins opening again. Possibility returns. The heart becomes less trapped inside survival. But even after learning not to live inside fear, another struggle quietly remains. Many people still suffer because they keep fighting the timing of life itself. They want healing now, answers now, success now, love now, relief now. And when life unfolds slower than expected, frustration begins growing inside the heart. Doubt appears, comparison appears, hopelessness appears. The mind starts asking, why is nothing happening for me yet? But some things in life cannot be forced before their season arrives. There is a kind of pain that comes from feeling out of sync with life. You work hard, try to grow, try to heal, try to move forward, yet certain doors remain closed longer than expected. Certain prayers seem unanswered. Certain dreams move slowly, and slowly impatience begins turning into emotional suffering. Many people are not only tired from fear, they are tired from fighting timing. The human mind struggles deeply with waiting. It wants visible results quickly because visible progress creates emotional reassurance. The mind says, if things are moving fast, then I am safe, then life is working, then I can relax. But life rarely unfolds according to human impatience. Nature itself teaches this constantly. Trees do not force themselves to grow overnight. Rivers do not rush to the ocean in panic. Seasons do not skip their unfolding simply because humans demand speed. Yet the modern mind constantly resists gradual unfolding. People want instant healing after heartbreak, instant confidence after insecurity, instant peace after years of anxiety, instant success after effort. And when life moves slowly, they begin doubting themselves, doubting the path, doubting existence itself. But Buddhism teaches something deeply calming. Timing is part of wisdom too. Not everything meaningful grows quickly. Some lessons require waiting. Some forms of growth happen invisibly before becoming visible externally. Some doors remain closed because the soul is still becoming capable of carrying what it asks for. This is one of the hardest truths for the impatient mind to accept, because impatience often hides a deeper. Emotional fear, the fear that nothing good is coming at all, that fear creates urgency, and urgency creates suffering. People begin forcing relationships that are not ready, forcing decisions before clarity arrives, forcing healing before the heart has softened, forcing life into timelines that reality itself is not following. And eventually, exhaustion appears, not because life failed them, but because they kept trying to control the natural unfolding of things. Buddhist understanding of karma is often misunderstood. Many people think karma simply means punishment or reward. But karma is more deeply connected to cause and effect. Energy creates consequences. Actions shape future conditions. Thoughts influence emotional reality. Intentions matter, yet karma also unfolds through timing. Seeds planted today do not bloom tomorrow morning. Growth happens through process, and process requires patience. This is why trust becomes essential on the spiritual path. Not passive waiting, not laziness, but trust that meaningful things often require unseen development before visible change appears. Many people abandon themselves too early because they do not see immediate results. A person begins healing work but stops because pain still exists after a few weeks. Someone starts building a dream but quits because success arrives slowly. A person opens their heart slightly but closes again because vulnerability still feels uncomfortable. The modern mind has become addicted to immediate confirmation, but many important transformations happen quietly for long periods before external evidence appears. Bamboo grows underground for years before shooting upward rapidly. During those invisible years, roots are strengthening beneath the surface. Human growth often works similarly. There are seasons where almost everything important is happening internally. Yet, because external proof is missing, the fearful mind assumes nothing is happening at all. This misunderstanding creates hopelessness. Hopelessness says, if I cannot see results yet, the process must be failing. But life is rarely that simple. Some experiences are preparing you slowly for what comes later. Some delays are not punishment. Some waiting seasons are not abandonment. Some forms of silence are not absence. Buddhism teaches deep respect for process because forcing life often creates unnecessary suffering. The flower forced open too early dies quickly. Fruit picked before ripening lacks sweetness. Wisdom rushed prematurely becomes shallow understanding instead of embodied truth. Timing matters, and one reason humans suffer so much emotionally is because they compare their unfolding to other people constantly. Someone else seems ahead financially, ahead romantically, ahead spiritually, ahead professionally, and comparison quietly poisons trust. Instead of honoring their own path, people begin panicking about pace. But every life unfolds differently because every soul carries different conditions, lessons, wounds, strengths, and timing. Comparison ignores this completely. It turns life into competition instead of experience. And once life becomes competition, peace disappears quickly. The mind constantly measures, constantly evaluates, constantly worries about being behind. But behind whom? According to what timeline? Human beings create imaginary schedules for life and then suffer whenever reality unfolds differently. By 30, this should happen. By 40, this should happen. By now, I should already feel healed. By now, life should already make sense. And when reality refuses these mental timelines, shame appears. But Buddhism teaches that shame often comes from attachment to expectation. Reality itself may simply be unfolding differently than imagined. This is why trusting karma also means trusting that life is not only visible through immediate outcomes. Sometimes your current season is teaching patience because patience itself is part of your growth. Sometimes your current season is strengthening emotional resilience before success arrives. Sometimes your current season is softening the ego before love deepens. Sometimes your current season is helping you detach from unhealthy desires before healthier opportunities emerge. But impatient minds cannot easily see invisible growth. They only focus on visible arrival. This creates enormous emotional suffering because much of life happens gradually. Healing especially unfolds slowly. People often expect healing to feel linear and predictable. But real healing moves in layers. 1 month feels peaceful. Another month feels difficult again. Old wounds resurface unexpectedly. Grief changes shape repeatedly. The impatient mind interprets this as failure. But healing is not mechanical, it is human, and karma unfolds through accumulated conditions over time. This means change often happens subtly before becoming obvious. One calm response instead of emotional reaction. One moment of awareness during fear. One small act of courage. One honest conversation. One healthier decision. These moments seem small individually, but slowly they reshape inner life. The problem is that humans often dismiss gradual transformation because it lacks dramatic emotional intensity. They overlook quiet progress, but quiet progress is still progress. Buddhist practice values consistency more than emotional urgency. A peaceful life is not built through dramatic moments alone. It is built through repeated small choices made with awareness over time. This understanding softens the need to force immediate outcomes, because now life becomes less about controlling timing and more about participating sincerely in the process itself. You begin asking different questions, not "why is this not happening fast enough?" but "how can I remain awake and compassionate during this season?" Not "when will I finally arrive?" but "how can I walk this part of the path honestly?" These questions create peace because they return attention to the present instead of obsessing over future arrival. There is also something deeply healing about realizing that not every delay is destruction. The fearful mind assumes delayed outcomes mean rejection, but sometimes delay protects, sometimes delay matures, sometimes delay redirects. Many people later discover that what once felt like painful delay actually prevented deeper suffering. A relationship arriving too early could have collapsed. Success arriving before emotional maturity could have destroyed balance. Certain lessons had to develop first. But humans rarely recognize this during waiting seasons. The waiting mind becomes restless. It wants reassurance constantly. And because uncertainty remains uncomfortable, people start forcing outcomes to escape emotional discomfort. They settle for unhealthy relationships because loneliness feels unbearable. They chase achievements endlessly because stillness feels empty. They abandon their path because temporary invisibility feels like failure. Yet forcing life usually creates deeper suffering later, because forced timing often ignores wisdom. The Buddha taught that craving creates suffering. One form of craving is craving immediate resolution. Humans crave certainty quickly, arrival quickly, comfort quickly. But craving itself creates tension. The nervous system tightens around desired outcomes. Peace becomes conditional. I can only relax once this happens. This mentality disconnects people from life itself. They stop inhabiting the current moment because the mind stays emotionally trapped in future waiting. But life keeps unfolding even during unfinished seasons. There is still beauty during uncertainty, still meaning during slowness, still value during invisible growth. And perhaps one of the deepest forms of spiritual maturity is learning how to trust the process without demanding constant proof. This trust does not mean pretending pain feels pleasant. Waiting can hurt. Uncertainty can feel heavy. Delayed dreams can create grief. Buddhism never asks people to deny these feelings. Instead, it teaches you how to remain compassionate and present inside them. You stop turning waiting into self-hatred. You stop assuming slowness means worthlessness. You stop believing your timeline defines your value as a human being. This creates emotional softness, and softness allows patience to breathe. Patience is not passive. Patience is steady trust, the ability to continue showing up without immediate guarantees. Farmers understand this naturally. They plant seeds while knowing harvest takes time. They do not scream at the soil daily demanding instant fruit. Yet emotionally, humans often treat their lives this way, demanding immediate blooming, immediate clarity, immediate reward. And when life unfolds slowly, frustration poisons the process itself. Buddhism invites you to become gentler with time, to stop treating your life like a machine that must constantly produce visible outcomes, to stop assuming invisible seasons contain no value, to stop panicking every time life moves differently than expected, because much suffering comes not from the path itself, but from resistance to its pace. There are moments when life intentionally slows people down, not to punish them, but to deepen them. Some souls need silence before wisdom emerges. Some hearts need solitude before healthy love appears. Some minds need uncertainty before surrender becomes possible. The ego hates these seasons because the ego wants visible progress constantly. But spiritual growth often unfolds in stillness first, and stillness cannot be rushed. One reason meditation becomes so important in Buddhist practice is because it retrains the nervous system away from constant urgency. Meditation teaches presence without immediate outcome, breathing without forcing, awareness without control. This slowly weakens the mind's addiction to constant arrival. You begin realizing that peace was never hidden only inside future achievement. Peace can exist during process too. This realization changes everything, because now life no longer feels like endless waiting for permission to relax. You begin living while unfolding instead of postponing life until unfolding ends. And perhaps that is one of the deepest lessons karma teaches. Life is not merely about reaching destinations, it is also about who you become during the unfolding itself. Are you becoming more patient, more aware, more compassionate, more grounded, more open-hearted? These qualities matter deeply, yet impatient minds often overlook them while obsessing over external timelines. There is also wisdom in recognizing that forcing timing often comes from mistrust. Mistrust in life, mistrust in process, mistrust in your own ability to survive uncertainty. But trust slowly develops through lived experience. You begin noticing that life has carried you through unfinished seasons before. Answers arrived eventually, healing unfolded gradually, clarity emerged later, strength developed quietly, not always according to your preferred schedule, but often in ways deeper than originally imagined. This does not mean every outcome will match your desires exactly. Life remains unpredictable, but trust means understanding that unpredictability itself is not proof of abandonment. The river still reaches the ocean without panicking about every turn. Nature unfolds without self-hatred. The moon does not rush its phases, and perhaps humans suffer partly because they have forgotten how to unfold naturally. Everything has become urgency, pressure, comparison, speed. Yet the soul heals slowly, love deepens slowly, wisdom develops slowly, inner peace strengthens slowly, and these things cannot be forced without distortion. Tonight, perhaps you can stop demanding immediate proof that your life is working. Perhaps invisible growth is already happening beneath the surface. Perhaps your current season contains preparation you cannot fully see yet. Perhaps the path is unfolding more wisely than fear currently understands. You do not need to force tomorrow into existence tonight. You do not need to panic because certain answers remain unfinished. You do not need to measure your worth by speed. The flower does not hate itself for blooming later than another flower. It simply blooms when its season arrives. And maybe your life is asking for the same trust now, not frantic control, not endless comparison, just patience, presence, and the quiet courage to keep walking without forcing life to move faster than wisdom allows. After learning to trust the timing of life, another softer wisdom begins to appear. If life does not need to unfold on your schedule, then maybe your mind does not need to understand everything right away either. Maybe not every question has to be answered tonight. Maybe not every confusion is a problem. Maybe some answers only become clear after the heart has become quiet enough to receive them. There is a rare peace that comes when you stop forcing life to explain itself before you allow yourself to breathe. Many people are not only tired because life is difficult, they are tired because they keep demanding answers from moments that are still unfolding. They want to know why something happened, where everything is going, what a person truly meant, whether a decision will work, whether pain will end, whether the future will be kind, and whether their life is still moving in the right direction. The mind keeps asking, as if peace can only arrive after every question has been solved. But the heart was not made to live under constant interrogation. There are seasons when the mind becomes like a restless child, pulling at the sleeve of life and saying, "Tell me now, show me now, explain this now." And when life remains silent, the mind becomes afraid. It assumes silence means danger. It assumes uncertainty means something is wrong. It assumes confusion means the path has failed. But Buddhism teaches that silence is not always emptiness. Sometimes silence is space. Sometimes silence is the place where wisdom is slowly forming. Sometimes life is not refusing to answer you. It is simply asking you to become still enough to hear what cannot be understood through panic. Not every answer comes through thinking harder. Some answers come through softening. Some answers come through waiting. Some answers come through living. This is very difficult for the fearful mind because fear believes understanding everything will create safety. It says, "If I can just figure this out, I will finally relax." So the mind starts digging through every detail. It replays conversations. It studies old memories. It tries to predict people's behavior. It searches for hidden meanings. It turns small signs into big conclusions. It keeps building mental maps of a future that has not arrived. And still, peace does not come. Because there is a kind of knowing that only appears when the mind stops grabbing. Buddhist peace is not built on having every answer. It is built on learning how to remain present, even when some answers are missing. This is a very different kind of strength. Most people think strength means solving everything quickly. But sometimes strength means standing calmly inside the unsolved without turning it into suffering. Life will always contain unanswered parts. No matter how wise you become, there will still be things you do not know. You will not always know why certain doors closed. You will not always know why someone changed. You will not always know why a season took longer than expected. You will not always know whether your effort will bring the result you want. You will not always know how the next chapter will look. And yet, you can still live. You can still breathe. You can still act kindly. You can still take one honest step. You can still be present with the life in front of you. The need to know everything now often comes from fear, not wisdom. Wisdom asks questions with patience. Fear asks questions with panic. Wisdom is curious. Fear is desperate. Wisdom can wait for truth to ripen. Fear wants to tear the fruit from the tree before it is ready. And when you rush an answer before its time, you may end up holding something unripe, bitter, and incomplete. This happens often in life. A person wants immediate clarity about a relationship, so they force conclusions before understanding has matured. Another person wants instant certainty about their path, so they abandon something meaningful too early. Someone else wants to understand their pain so quickly that they do not allow grief to move naturally through the heart. They try to explain everything while they are still bleeding emotionally, but some pain cannot be understood at the exact moment it arrives. At first, it can only be held gently. There is deep compassion in this. You do not need to understand your wound completely before you begin caring for it. A child who falls does not need a full explanation of gravity before receiving comfort. In the same way, your heart does not need every spiritual answer before it deserves tenderness. Sometimes the most Buddhist thing you can do is stop demanding that your pain become meaningful immediately and simply sit beside yourself with kindness. This is where many people become harsh with themselves. They think, "Why am I still confused? Why do I not know what to do? Why can't I move on? Why can't I understand this yet?" But confusion is not failure. Confusion is often the mind standing at the edge of something new before the next level of understanding has arrived. A foggy morning does not mean the sun is gone. It only means the air is still clearing. The same is true inside you. When you do not have every answer, it does not mean wisdom has abandoned you. It may mean wisdom is working quietly beneath the noise. It may mean the mind has reached its limit, and the heart must now learn another way of knowing. Buddhism teaches that the mind is useful, but it is not the whole of life. The thinking mind can plan, compare, remember, analyze, and solve. But it can also trap itself in loops. It can turn questions into cages. It can create suffering by demanding certainty where only direct experience can teach. There are answers you cannot think your way into. You must live your way into them. This is why forcing clarity can become another form of control. You are not only trying to understand, you are trying to dominate the unknown. You are trying to make life harmless by explaining it completely. But life is bigger than explanation. Some truths are not understood all at once. They are absorbed slowly through experience, silence, failure, healing, compassion, and time. Think of how many things in your past only made sense later. At the time you may have felt lost, rejected, delayed, or confused. But later you saw something you could not see then. Maybe that ending protected you. Maybe that delay shaped you. Maybe that disappointment redirected you. Maybe that lonely season taught you how to return to yourself. The answer came, but not when fear demanded it. This is why patience with unanswered questions becomes a spiritual practice. It teaches humility. It reminds you that your current understanding is not the final truth. It helps you stop worshipping your immediate interpretation of life. Fear always wants to define things too early. It says, this is bad, this is over, this is hopeless. This means you failed. This means nothing will change. But life may still be unfolding in ways you cannot yet see. When you do not need every answer now, you give life permission to reveal itself more honestly. You stop squeezing meaning out of moments before they have finished speaking. You stop forcing your mind to carry conclusions that are not ready. This brings relief. The body feels it first. The shoulders soften. The breath grows deeper. The jaw loosens. The heart stops bracing so tightly. You begin realizing that not knowing everything is uncomfortable, but it is not unbearable. You can survive not knowing. You can rest while questions remain open. This is a powerful realization because many people treat uncertainty like an emergency. The unanswered question becomes a fire in the mind. They feel they must solve it immediately or they will not be okay. But when you practice sitting with the unanswered, you discover something surprising. The question may still be there, but you do not have to burn inside it. You can let the question sit beside you without letting it rule you. This is a rare peace. It is rare because most people are addicted to mental closure. They want every story neatly finished, every person clearly understood, every future fully predicted, every pain explained. But life is not always neat. Sometimes it is layered, slow, mysterious, contradictory, beautiful and painful at the same time. The mature heart learns how to live without turning every mystery into panic. Buddhism does not ask you to stop seeking truth. It asks you to stop seeking truth with a trembling fist. There is a difference between sincere inquiry and anxious obsession. Sincere inquiry opens the mind. Anxious obsession tightens it. Sincere inquiry listens. Anxious obsession demands. Sincere inquiry can breathe. Anxious obsession cannot rest. When the mind becomes obsessed with answers, it often stops seeing what is already available. It ignores the simple next step because it wants the full map. It ignores the wisdom of the body because it wants perfect logic. It ignores the present moment because it wants future certainty. But often the next step is all you need, not the entire explanation, not the full ending, just the next honest step. Drink the water, make the call, rest your body, tell the truth gently, do the work in front of you, let the heart settle, return to the breath. Sometimes life becomes clearer, not because you solved everything, but because you stopped overwhelming yourself with too many demands at once. The mind loves complexity when it is afraid. It takes one question and turns it into 20. It takes one decision and turns it into a maze. It takes one emotion and turns it into a life sentence. But presence simplifies. It brings you back to what is here, what is real, what is possible now. And in that simplicity, peace begins to return. There is also a deep connection between unanswered questions and trust. When you need every answer immediately, it often means you do not yet trust your ability to meet life as it unfolds. You feel that if you do not know everything now, you will be helpless later. But this belief is not always true. You have met unknowns before. You have walked through unclear seasons before. You have received strength after thinking you had none left. You have learned things only after life placed you in situations that required growth. The answers did not all arrive early, but you still continued. This memory matters. It reminds you that life does not have to reveal everything in advance for you to be guided. Sometimes guidance comes in small pieces, a quiet feeling, a door closing, a conversation, a pause, a mistake, a delay, a sudden moment of clarity after long confusion. The Buddhist path honors this kind of slow unfolding. It does not rush wisdom. It does not force the flower open. It does not demand that the moon become full before its phase. It understands that everything has rhythm, even understanding, even healing, even peace. When you stop needing every answer now, you become more available to life as it is. You listen better. You observe more clearly. You stop projecting your fear so heavily onto everything. You allow people and situations to reveal themselves over time. This is important because premature conclusions can create unnecessary suffering. The mind may decide too quickly that someone does not care, that a dream is impossible, that a season is meaningless, that a delay is rejection, or that pain will last forever. But when you slow down, you leave room for truth to become more complete. Patience protects you from false conclusions. Stillness protects you from fear-based decisions. Presence protects you from turning temporary confusion into permanent despair. There is a quiet dignity in saying, "I do not know yet, and I can still be at peace." That sentence carries enormous freedom. It releases the need to pretend. You do not have to fake certainty. You do not have to invent explanations just to feel in control. You do not have to pressure yourself into answers that your heart is not ready to hold. You can be honest. I do not know yet. This is still unfolding. I am still learning. My understanding is not complete. These words may feel simple, but they are deeply spiritual. They make room for humility. They make room for growth. They make room for life to surprise you. The ego hates not knowing because it wants to feel powerful, but the soul can rest in not knowing because it understands that mystery is not always danger. Mystery can also be sacred. A seed does not know the full shape of the tree it will become. A river does not see the entire ocean while moving through the valley. The night does not rush the dawn by worrying. Nature is full of things becoming without needing full explanation at every stage. You are part of that same life. You are allowed to be in process. You are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to carry questions without turning them into shame. This is especially healing for people who feel behind in life. They want answers because they believe answers will prove they are not lost. But sometimes the desire for proof becomes another burden. You do not need to prove that your path is valid every day. You do not need to understand every turn before the road can still be meaningful. Some paths only make sense after they have shaped you. Some lessons only reveal themselves after they have softened your pride, deepened your compassion, or strengthened your patience. This is why not needing every answer now becomes a form of faith, not blind faith, not passive belief, but a quiet willingness to remain open while life continues unfolding. You trust that clarity can come later. You trust that confusion is not the end. You trust that unanswered questions do not make your life worthless. You trust that peace is still possible before certainty arrives. This is a different kind of peace than most people search for. Most people search for the peace of resolution, the peace of finally knowing, the peace of having no more loose ends. But Buddhism points toward a deeper peace, the peace that exists even before resolution, the peace of breathing inside mystery, the peace of walking without the whole map, the peace of letting life be unfinished without calling it broken. This peace is rare because it cannot be bought, rushed, or forced. It grows through practice. Every time you stop chasing an answer in panic and return to your breath, you strengthen it. Every time you allow a question to remain open without attacking yourself, you strengthen it. Every time you choose presence over mental pressure, you strengthen it. Slowly, the mind learns a new way. It learns that not knowing is not the same as failing. It learns that silence is not always abandonment. It learns that uncertainty can be held gently. It learns that life does not need to confess all its secrets before you are allowed to rest. And when this lesson sinks deeply into the heart, something beautiful happens. Your relationship with time changes. You stop treating the future like a locked door that must be broken open tonight. You stop treating unanswered questions like enemies. You stop treating confusion like proof that your life is wrong. You begin to move more softly. You begin to listen more deeply. You begin to trust that some answers are coming quietly, not loudly, and some answers may not come in the form you expected. Sometimes the answer is not a sentence. Sometimes the answer is peace after letting go. Sometimes the answer is strength after surviving. Sometimes the answer is a new desire replacing an old one. Sometimes the answer is realizing you no longer need the answer as badly as you once thought. That is a powerful moment, when the question that once controlled you no longer owns your inner life, when the future that once terrified you no longer steals your breath, when the explanation you once demanded no longer feels necessary for peace. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop suffering unnecessarily around what has not yet been revealed. Tonight, perhaps there are questions still sitting inside you. Questions about your future, your healing, your relationships, your purpose, your pain, your next step. Let them be there without turning them into enemies. You do not have to answer them all before morning. You do not have to carry them with clenched hands. Let the mind soften around them. Let the breath create space. Let the body remember that it is safe to rest even while life remains unfinished. Not every answer is ready. Not every door is open. Not every path is visible. But this moment is still here. Your breath is still here. Life is still quietly holding you. And perhaps for tonight, that can be enough. When you no longer need every answer immediately, the mind slowly begins to loosen its grip. There is more breathing room inside the heart, more softness around uncertainty. But even then, another habit quietly remains hidden beneath the surface. The habit of mentally living inside disasters that have not happened. The body may be sitting safely in a quiet room, yet the mind is somewhere else entirely. Somewhere painful, somewhere frightening, somewhere catastrophic. And after enough time, imagined suffering starts feeling more real than the life actually unfolding in front of you. This is where many people unknowingly lose years of peace. There are people who suffer every day from events that never arrive. Their mind wakes up already predicting collapse. Before anything even happens, they are mentally preparing for failure, rejection, loss, humiliation, sickness, abandonment, disappointment, or tragedy. And because the mind repeats these imagined disasters constantly, the body begins reacting as if danger is already present. The chest tightens, The stomach hardens, breathing becomes shallow, sleep becomes restless, joy becomes difficult to receive. Even calm moments feel fragile because the mind keeps whispering something bad is coming. This is one of the most exhausting ways to live, not because reality is always unbearable, but because the mind never stops creating emotional emergencies. Buddhism understands this deeply. It teaches that suffering is often multiplied by mental attachment and projection. Pain may exist in life naturally, but the mind frequently creates additional suffering by imagining painful futures over and over again. This is why many people are emotionally exhausted long before anything difficult actually happens. They are fighting imagined disasters every day. The human brain has a survival instinct that constantly scans for danger. Long ago, this instinct helped human beings stay alive. It learned to notice threats quickly. But in modern life, this same survival system often becomes trapped in overdrive. The mind starts treating uncertainty itself as danger. A delayed message becomes rejection. A mistake becomes permanent failure. A difficult conversation becomes emotional catastrophe. A small symptom becomes terrifying illness. An uncertain future becomes hopelessness. Fear takes incomplete information and fills the empty space with disaster. And the more emotionally sensitive a person becomes, the more vivid these mental disasters can feel. The mind creates scenes so convincing that the body believes them. A person may sit peacefully at home while internally imagining losing everything. Their heart races over situations that exist nowhere except thought. This is why imagined disasters can feel physically real. The nervous system responds to mental images almost as strongly as direct experiences. That is why fear is so powerful, not because every fear is true, but because the body reacts before wisdom fully enters. Buddhism does not teach that you should never think about the future wisely. Wisdom matters, preparation matters, responsibility matters, but there is a difference between wise awareness and compulsive catastrophe. Wise awareness says, life contains uncertainty, so I will remain present and prepared. Catastrophic thinking says, everything could go wrong at any moment, so I must mentally suffer in advance. This second pattern slowly destroys peace, because imagined disasters never end. Once one fear fades, another quickly appears. The mind says, what if I lose this? What if they leave? What if I embarrass myself? What if I fail? What if life never improves? What if I cannot handle the future? And each question pulls attention away from reality and into emotional fiction. The tragedy is that many people eventually become strangers to the present moment because they spend so much time mentally rehearsing pain. A beautiful day arrives, but the mind is preparing for loss. Love appears, but the mind predicts abandonment. Opportunity appears, but the mind predicts humiliation. Rest appears, but the mind predicts danger. Fear steals experiences before life even touches them. This is why stopping imagined disasters is not simply positive thinking. It is a spiritual return to reality. Reality is often far smaller than fear's stories. Right now, perhaps your body is breathing safely. Right now, perhaps the room is quiet. Right now, perhaps no disaster is actually happening. Yet the mind can still create enormous suffering inside peaceful moments. This is what Buddhism asks you to notice carefully. Not to shame yourself, not to force your mind into perfection, but to become aware of how often your thoughts are creating pain that reality has not asked you to carry. Awareness changes everything, because once you notice the pattern clearly, you stop automatically believing every fearful mental image. You begin asking gentle questions instead. Is this actually happening right now? Am I responding to life itself or to a mental prediction? Is this thought protecting me wisely or simply frightening me? These questions create space between you and fear. And that space is deeply healing. Without space, every thought feels like truth, every fear feels like prophecy, every emotion feels permanent. But awareness reminds you that thoughts are mental events, not guaranteed realities. This is important because the mind often mistakes possibility for certainty. Something bad could happen, yes. Life contains uncertainty. But fear changes possibility into emotional certainty. The mind starts acting as though disaster is already guaranteed. This creates constant tension, and tension slowly exhausts the soul. Many people do not realize how addicted they have become to mentally preparing for pain. They think worrying keeps them safe. They believe if they emotionally rehearse disaster enough, they will somehow reduce suffering later. But usually the opposite happens. They simply suffer twice. First in imagination, then again if difficulty actually arrives. And often, the imagined suffering becomes larger than reality itself. How many nights have human beings lost to disasters that never happened? How many peaceful moments disappeared because the mind kept predicting collapse? How many opportunities were abandoned because fear painted terrifying futures that never arrived? This habit becomes especially strong in people who have experienced emotional pain before. Trauma teaches the nervous system to expect danger quickly. A person who has experienced betrayal may begin anticipating betrayal everywhere. A person who has experienced failure may begin expecting humiliation constantly. The mind tries to prevent future pain by scanning endlessly for warning signs. But this creates hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is exhausting because the nervous system never fully rests. It constantly watches, constantly predicts, constantly prepares. Even peaceful moments become emotionally unsafe because the mind expects interruption. Buddhist mindfulness gently retrains this pattern. Mindfulness teaches the nervous system how to return to direct experience instead of imagined catastrophe. Not tomorrow, not next year, not the terrifying mental movie. This breath, this chair, this sound, this moment. Mindfulness interrupts mental time travel, and mental time travel is where imagined disasters grow strongest. Fear almost always lives in the future. It says, what if? What if you lose everything? What if nobody understands you? What if you fail publicly? What if life becomes unbearable? The mind creates endless future scenes and emotionally lives inside them before they happen. But Buddhism returns you to what is actually here now. This does not magically erase uncertainty. It simply prevents you from drowning inside possibilities that do not yet exist. One of the deepest causes of imagined disasters is the inability to tolerate uncertainty emotionally. The mind says, if I cannot fully control the future, then I must mentally prepare for the worst. But preparation becomes obsession, and obsession becomes suffering. Eventually, people stop experiencing life directly because fear constantly interrupts reality with catastrophic prediction. This is why presence becomes such powerful medicine. Presence interrupts projection. You begin noticing small truths again. The warmth of tea, the sound of breathing, the safety of this moment, the fact that life is still here. Presence does not deny future uncertainty. It simply refuses to abandon reality for imaginary suffering. This distinction matters enormously because fear loves abstraction, abstract disasters, abstract catastrophes, abstract endings. But reality exists concretely. One breath, one moment, one step. A fearful mind jumps far ahead. A peaceful mind returns gently here. This return takes practice because the mind has often rehearsed fear for years. Catastrophic thinking becomes automatic through repetition. Its brain creates emotional habits. If disaster thinking repeats long enough, The nervous system starts expecting fear constantly. But habits can change, not instantly, not through force, but through awareness repeated patiently over time. Each time you notice catastrophic thinking without fully surrendering to it, you weaken its control slightly. Each time you return to reality instead of mental disaster, you strengthen presence. Each time you breathe through uncertainty without creating emotional apocalypse, the nervous system learns something new. It learns that uncertainty itself is survivable. This is a profound realization, because many anxious minds secretly believe uncertainty is intolerable. They feel they must predict everything in order to stay emotionally safe. But life has never required perfect prediction to continue. You have already survived countless unknowns before. You have already walked through situations you once feared deeply, and many fears never arrived at all. This matters because catastrophic thinking distorts perspective. It focuses almost entirely on negative outcomes while ignoring human resilience completely. Fear says, "What if everything falls apart?" Wisdom quietly asks, "And what if you are stronger than you think?" Fear says, "What if you cannot handle it?" Wisdom asks, "Have you not handled difficult things before?" Catastrophic thinking erases memory of survival. It treats every future challenge as proof of total collapse. But human beings are remarkably adaptable. People heal, recover, learn, begin again, even after painful experiences. This does not mean suffering is easy. Buddhism never romanticizes pain, but it does remind you that imagined disasters usually underestimate your ability to meet life. Fear tells you only about destruction. It rarely tells you about resilience. This is why imagined disasters create hopelessness so quickly. They remove possibility entirely. The mind paints futures with no escape, no support, no growth, no healing. Only doom. But reality is rarely that absolute. Life contains difficulty and unexpected support simultaneously. Pain and beauty often coexist. Loss and new beginnings can coexist. The fearful mind struggles to see this complexity because it becomes hypnotized by worst-case scenarios. Buddhist wisdom restores balance. It teaches you to notice fearful thoughts without turning them into absolute truth. This is especially important because catastrophic thinking becomes addictive in subtle ways. The mind mistakenly believes constant fear creates control. It thinks, if I stay alert enough, maybe I can prevent pain. But endless alertness does not create peace. It creates exhaustion. The body was not meant to live permanently braced against imaginary danger. Sooner or later, emotional burnout appears. The heart becomes tired. The nervous system becomes overwhelmed. Joy becomes harder to access. Simple moments stop feeling safe. This is one reason anxiety often disconnects people from ordinary beauty. The mind becomes so focused on future disaster that it stops receiving present life. Sunlight passes unnoticed. Laughter feels distant. Love feels fragile. Everything becomes filtered through anticipation of loss. And perhaps this is one of the saddest effects of imagined disasters. They steal life before life even changes. A person suffers future grief while the people they love are still beside them. They suffer future failure before beginning. They suffer future loneliness while still surrounded by care. Fear convinces them to emotionally leave life early, but Buddhism keeps calling you back. Back to this moment. Back to direct experience. Back to what is actually happening instead of what the mind predicts might happen. This return is not denial, it is clarity. Clarity says, this fear is a thought, not certainty. This future has not happened. I do not need to suffer every possibility right now. I can stay here instead of abandoning myself to imagined disaster. These realizations create emotional breathing room, and breathing room changes how the nervous system experiences existence. You begin feeling less trapped, less hunted by thought, less emotionally consumed by prediction. There is also great wisdom in understanding that catastrophic thinking often grows strongest when people feel disconnected from themselves, when exhausted, lonely, overstimulated, emotionally overwhelmed. The mind becomes more vulnerable to disaster stories during these conditions. This is why self-care matters spiritually too. Rest matters, stillness matters, healthy boundaries matter, silence matters. The nervous system cannot heal while constantly flooded with stimulation and fear. Modern life trains people to remain mentally overloaded. Endless news, endless comparison, endless pressure, endless information. The mind absorbs fear continuously without rest, and eventually, catastrophic thinking becomes normal. But normal does not mean healthy. A peaceful mind requires space. Time away from constant fear, feeding. Time inside nature. Time in silence. Time simply breathing without endless prediction. The Buddha often retreated into stillness because stillness reveals how noisy the fearful mind has become. Only in quiet moments do many people finally notice how often they are mentally rehearsing disaster. And once noticed clearly, the pattern can begin softening, not through violence against yourself, not through shame, but through compassionate awareness. You stop attacking yourself for having fearful thoughts. Instead, you gently stop feeding them unquestioningly. This gentleness matters deeply, because harsh self-judgment often strengthens fear further. A frightened mind does not heal through punishment. It heals through safety, compassion, presence, patience. Slowly, the nervous system learns a new truth. Not every thought deserves panic. Not every possibility deserves suffering. Not every uncertainty is catastrophe. This new relationship with thought changes life profoundly. The future no longer feels like endless threat. The present becomes more available again. Ordinary moments regain warmth. Breathing feels deeper. The body softens. And perhaps for the first time in a long while, life begins feeling livable instead of constantly dangerous. Tonight, maybe you can notice how many imagined disasters your mind has carried lately. The conversations that never happened, the endings that never arrived, the failures that existed only in thought, the futures your body suffered through without reality ever asking it to. And maybe, gently, you can begin setting some of those invisible burdens down, not because life is perfectly certain, but because your soul deserves more than endless rehearsal of pain. You deserve moments untouched by catastrophe, moments where this breath is enough, moments where the future is allowed to remain unwritten, moments where the mind finally stops turning possibility into fear and begins returning quietly to life itself. After spending so much time inside imagined disasters, the mind slowly becomes tired of carrying realities that do not exist. Fear loses some of its authority. The constant prediction, the endless mental rehearsing, the emotional panic about tomorrow all begin to feel heavy. And somewhere beneath that exhaustion, a quieter desire finally appears. The desire to return, not to the past, not to fantasy, but to what is actually real. There comes a moment when a person realizes how much of life has been lived inside thought instead of direct experience. The body walks through the world, but the mind lives somewhere else entirely, somewhere in memory, somewhere in fear, somewhere in prediction, somewhere in endless mental stories. And because of this, reality itself begins feeling distant. This is one of the deepest forms of suffering, not simply pain, but disconnection from what is actually here. A person drinks tea without tasting it because their mind is replaying old conversations. They sit beside people they love while mentally preparing for future loss. They walk beneath the sky without seeing it because anxiety keeps pulling them into imagined futures. The present moment quietly disappears beneath mental noise. This is why Buddhism places so much importance on returning to what is real, because reality itself is often far gentler than the mind's constant storytelling. The mind creates layers upon layers of interpretation. A simple event happens, and immediately thought begins building stories around it. Someone becomes quiet, and the mind says, "They are upset with me." A plan changes, and the mind says, "Everything is falling apart." A difficult emotion appears, and the mind says, "I will feel this forever." Very quickly, direct reality becomes buried beneath mental projection. But reality itself is usually simpler. A person was simply quiet. A plan simply changed. An emotion simply appeared. The suffering often comes from the story added afterward. This is one of the most important Buddhist understandings. Human beings do not only experience life directly, they experience their interpretation of life. And fearful interpretation can create enormous suffering even during relatively ordinary moments. Returning to what is real means learning how to separate direct experience from mental storytelling. This takes awareness because the mind moves quickly. It automatically labels, predicts, judges, compares, dramatizes, and interprets. Most people are so identified with these mental movements that they do not even notice them happening. Thought feels like reality. Fear feels like truth. Stories feel factual. But mindfulness interrupts this automatic fusion. Mindfulness gently asks, what is actually happening right now? Not what the mind predicts, not what fear imagines, not what memory projects. What is truly here? This question becomes incredibly healing because it brings the nervous system back into contact with reality instead of fantasy. Right now, perhaps there is breathing, a chair beneath the body, air entering the lungs, a sound in the distance, a heartbeat continuing quietly. Reality is usually happening in very ordinary ways, but the mind constantly leaves ordinary reality, searching for emotional certainty elsewhere. One reason people become so trapped inside mental suffering is because they mistake thinking for living. They think endlessly about life instead of inhabiting it. Thinking has value, of course. Buddhism never rejects the mind entirely. The mind can learn, reason, reflect, and understand. But excessive mental activity without awareness creates disconnection. A person can think about peace constantly while never actually feeling present enough to experience peace directly. This is why Buddhist practice emphasizes embodiment, returning to the body, returning to the breath, returning to sensation, returning to what can actually be touched, heard, felt, and lived now. The breath becomes especially important because breathing always happens in the present moment. The mind travels through time constantly, but breathing remains here. This is why the Buddha taught awareness of breathing as such a powerful path back to reality. When attention rests fully on breathing, mental noise begins slowing slightly. The body softens. The nervous system reconnects with direct experience instead of endless thought. And for many people, this feels unfamiliar at first, because they have spent years living inside mental abstraction, worrying, planning, rehearsing, regretting, predicting. The mind becomes so crowded that silence itself starts feeling uncomfortable. But underneath that discomfort is something beautiful: stillness. Stillness allows reality to become visible again, not dramatic reality, not spiritual fantasy, simple reality. This moment, this breath, this ordinary existence unfolding quietly. There is something deeply sacred about ordinary reality once the mind stops constantly escaping it. A bird singing outside a window, warm water running over your hands, a loved one's voice, sunlight on a wall, the feeling of tiredness at the end of a long day. These moments seem small, but they are life itself, and many people miss them entirely because the mind remains trapped somewhere else. Buddhism teaches that awakening is not necessarily about escaping ordinary life. It is about fully returning to it, fully tasting, fully listening, fully noticing, fully inhabiting reality instead of mentally floating above it all the time. This return changes emotional suffering profoundly, because fear survives most strongly inside abstraction, abstract futures, abstract catastrophes, abstract identities. But direct reality is often more manageable than mental imagination. A fearful mind says, "My whole life is collapsing." Reality says, "Right now, sadness is present." A fearful mind says, "Everything is ruined." Reality says, "This moment feels painful." Fear speaks globally. Reality speaks specifically. This distinction matters deeply because catastrophic thinking turns temporary emotional experiences into total life conclusions. But reality is always more immediate and grounded than the mind's exaggerations. One of the reasons mindfulness feels calming is because it returns experience to manageable size. Not forever, not everything, just this moment, this breath, this step, this feeling moving through the body, this soft awareness. This creates emotional space, and emotional space interrupts panic. Many people suffer because they are trying to mentally carry their entire life at once. The future, the past, every possibility, every fear, every responsibility. The mind collapses under the weight, but reality itself only arrives one moment at a time. This is deeply liberating once fully understood. You do not need to survive your entire future tonight. You only need to meet this moment honestly. Buddhist practice constantly returns to this simplicity because simplicity heals mental fragmentation. Fragmentation happens when attention is scattered everywhere except the present. One part of the mind fears tomorrow. Another regrets yesterday. Another compares itself to others. Another predicts failure. The self becomes divided internally. But presence reunifies attention. Breathing reunifies attention. Awareness reunifies attention. And, slowly, the nervous system begins feeling whole again. This wholeness is not perfection. It is groundedness. A feeling of being fully here instead of emotionally scattered across imaginary realities. Returning to what is real also means returning to the body honestly. Many people live disconnected from their body because the mind dominates experience completely. They ignore exhaustion, ignore tension, ignore emotional overwhelm, ignore the nervous system's signals, but the body carries truth quietly. Tight shoulders, shallow breathing, fatigue, restlessness, pressure in the chest. The body often reveals emotional reality long before the conscious mind admits it. This is why Buddhist awareness includes body awareness too. Noticing tension, noticing movement, noticing sensations without immediately judging them. The body becomes an anchor back into direct experience, because the body exists now. Not in tomorrow's fear, not in yesterday's regret, now. This does not mean all present moment experiences feel pleasant. Sometimes reality contains pain, grief, uncertainty, loneliness. Buddhism never asks people to deny this. In fact, returning to what is real often means finally allowing yourself to feel emotions honestly instead of constantly escaping them mentally. Many people use overthinking to avoid direct emotional experience. They analyze sadness instead of feeling it, predict future outcomes instead of sitting with uncertainty, create mental stories instead of allowing grief to move naturally. But emotions need presence more than endless analysis. A wave passes more naturally when allowed to move. Resistance often intensifies suffering. This is why mindfulness includes emotional honesty. Not pretending everything feels peaceful, not spiritually bypassing pain, but saying honestly, sadness is here, fear is here, confusion is here, without immediately building an entire identity around those feelings. This changes emotional experience enormously, because now feelings are recognized as temporary visitors rather than permanent definitions. Fear becomes something happening, not who you are. Sadness becomes something moving through the heart, not your entire identity. This creates spaciousness around emotional pain, and spaciousness allows healing. Returning to what is real also weakens ego-driven suffering. The ego constantly creates stories about identity. I must be successful to matter. I must always appear strong. I must control how others see me. I must prove my worth. These mental constructions create enormous pressure. But reality itself is simpler than ego's endless performance demands. Reality says, you are breathing, you are human, you are unfinished, you are changing, you are alive. This simplicity can feel deeply freeing after years of psychological pressure, because the ego survives through constant comparison and performance. Presence dissolves some of that tension. You stop needing every moment to prove something. You stop turning existence into endless self-evaluation. You simply return, again and again, to reality, to breath, to direct experience. This returning becomes a spiritual practice itself. Not once, thousands of times. The mind wanders into fear. Return. The mind wanders into memory. Return. The mind creates catastrophic stories. Return. The mind compares endlessly. Return. This is why mindfulness is called practice. The mind will continue wandering. Human minds naturally move. The goal is not perfect mental silence forever. The goal is remembering how to come back without violence toward yourself. Gentleness matters deeply here. A harsh mind cannot create peace. Many people attack themselves constantly for overthinking, fearing, worrying, or struggling emotionally. But self-attack only creates more fragmentation. The Buddha taught compassion because healing requires safety, not punishment. A frightened nervous system softens through kindness, so each return to reality should feel compassionate, not forceful. Oh, the mind wandered again. Fear appeared again. Thinking became intense again, and then gently, return. This gentleness changes the entire emotional atmosphere inside the mind. Instead of endless war against yourself, awareness becomes more like guiding a tired child home, patiently, softly, without shame. There is also profound freedom in realizing that reality itself is often enough. Not perfect, not complete, but enough. The mind constantly demands more stimulation, more certainty, more achievement, more emotional intensity. But direct experience often contains quiet richness already. Birdsong, breathing, stillness, warmth, human connection, the texture of ordinary life. People overlook these things because the mind is addicted to psychological drama. Drama feels stimulating. Presence feels simple, but simplicity heals. This is why Buddhist monks often live very simply. Not because simplicity itself is magical, but because simplicity removes many unnecessary distractions from direct experience. Modern life constantly pulls attention away from reality. Endless screens, endless information, endless noise, endless comparison. The nervous system becomes overloaded, and overloaded minds lose contact with direct living. Returning to what is real becomes revolutionary in such a distracted world, because now you stop living mainly inside manufactured stimulation and begin reconnecting with existence itself. Silence becomes valuable again, stillness becomes nourishing again, ordinary moments regain sacredness. This sacredness is not dramatic, it is quiet, a quiet appreciation for simply being alive. for simply existing here now. This appreciation weakens suffering because suffering often grows through resistance to reality. Resistance says, this moment should be different. My feelings should not exist. Life should already be resolved. Reality should match my expectations. But reality rarely obeys human demand, and fighting reality constantly exhausts the soul. Acceptance softens this fight. Not passive surrender, not hopelessness, but honest recognition of what is here now. This honesty creates peace because energy stops being wasted denying reality. You stop mentally arguing with existence every moment. You stop demanding certainty before allowing yourself rest. You stop resisting the unfinished nature of life so aggressively. And slowly, life begins feeling more intimate again, more direct, more alive, more human. This intimacy with reality creates gratitude naturally, not forced positivity, not denial of suffering, but simple appreciation for being able to experience life directly again, to breathe consciously, to feel sunlight, to hear rain, to sit quietly without constant mental warfare. These experiences become deeply meaningful once the mind stops abandoning reality constantly. Tonight, perhaps you can gently return again, not to your fears, not to tomorrow, not to the endless stories of the mind, but here, to the feeling of breathing, to the sound around you, to the body resting right now, to this unfinished but real moment. Life is happening here, not inside every imagined future. Reality is waiting patiently beneath the noise, and perhaps peace has never been as far away as the fearful mind once believed. When you return to what is real, you begin to notice something the fearful mind often misses. The life in front of you may not look like the life you once wanted, but it may be shaping something inside you that comfort alone could never build. The ordinary days, the delays, the quiet disappointments, the unanswered questions, and even the parts you wish were different may be carrying lessons your dream life could not teach so deeply. There is a hidden kind of wisdom inside the life you are living now. Not because everything is easy, not because everything feels fair, not because every pain has a simple reason, but because this present life, with all its rough edges, keeps meeting you exactly where your soul still needs to grow. Many people spend years looking at their current life as if it is only a waiting room. They tell themselves, "This is not my real life yet. My real life will begin when I have more money, when I find love, when I move somewhere better, when my body feels stronger, when my mind is healed, when people finally understand me." So they live with one foot outside the present, always reaching toward a better version of existence. And there is nothing wrong with wanting growth. There is nothing wrong with dreaming, building, hoping, and moving toward something brighter. But suffering begins when the dream life becomes so powerful in the mind that the current life starts feeling worthless. This is where Buddhism becomes deeply compassionate. It does not ask you to abandon your dreams. It asks you to stop abandoning your present life because of them. Because the life you are living now is not empty. It is not useless. It is not just a mistake you must escape from before meaning can begin. It may be teaching patience in a way quick success never could. It may be teaching humility in a way praise never could. It may be teaching compassion in a way comfort never could. It may be teaching strength in a way ease never could. The dream life often promises comfort. The current life often builds depth, and depth matters. A person who has never struggled may know how to enjoy blessings, but may not know how to sit beside someone in pain. A person who has never waited may know how to receive quickly, but may not know how to trust slowly. A person who has always been understood may not know the quiet strength of standing alone without bitterness. A person whose life always matched their plans may not know how to bend without breaking. This does not mean pain is good in itself. Buddhism does not ask you to glorify suffering. It simply teaches that suffering, when met with awareness, can become a doorway into wisdom. The same experience that hardens one person can soften another. The same delay that makes one person bitter can teach another person patience. The same loss that closes one heart can open another heart more deeply. The difference is not only what happens, the difference is how consciously it is met. Your current life may be asking you to meet yourself in ways your dream life would allow you to avoid. It may be showing you your attachments, your fears, your impatience, your need for control, your hunger for approval, your hidden anger, your quiet loneliness, your belief that you are not enough unless life looks impressive from the outside. These are not punishments, they are mirrors, and mirrors can be uncomfortable because they show what we would rather not see. But without seeing, healing remains shallow. Without awareness, patterns repeat quietly. Without honest contact with the present, the mind keeps chasing new circumstances while carrying the same old suffering inside. Many people believe that if they reached their dream life, they would automatically become peaceful. But peace does not always arrive through better conditions alone. If the mind remains restless, it will carry restlessness into success. If the heart remains fearful, it will carry fear into love. If the ego remains hungry, it will carry hunger into achievement. If the nervous system remains trained to expect danger, it will find danger even inside comfort. This is why the current life matters so much. It reveals what still lives inside you. A dream life can distract you from yourself. A current life often introduces you to yourself. This is not always pleasant. Sometimes your present life shows you how easily you compare, how quickly you lose trust, how deeply you fear being unseen, how much your peace depends on outcomes, how often you judge yourself for being unfinished. But these revelations are not there to shame you. They are there to free you, because whatever you can see clearly, you can begin to transform gently. Buddhist wisdom teaches that awareness is the beginning of liberation. You cannot loosen a knot you refuse to look at. You cannot heal a wound you keep covering with fantasy. You cannot become free from attachment while pretending attachment is not there. Your present life brings the hidden knots into view. The dream life may say, everything will feel better when you arrive. But the present life asks, can you learn to breathe here? Can you learn to be kind here? Can you learn to stop hating yourself here? Can you learn to live with dignity before the world gives you applause? That question is powerful, because if peace only exists after life changes, then peace remains fragile. It depends on circumstances. It can be taken away whenever conditions shift. But if peace begins growing inside this imperfect current life, then it becomes rooted more deeply. It becomes less dependent on external permission. This is the quiet strength Buddhism points toward. Not waiting for the perfect life before becoming present. Not waiting for every problem to disappear before practicing compassion. Not waiting for the future to approve of you before you treat this moment as sacred. Your current life may be teaching you how to stop making peace conditional. That may be one of its greatest lessons. Most people do not realize how many conditions they place on peace. I will be peaceful if people treat me correctly. I will be peaceful if my plans succeed. I will be peaceful if I never feel uncertain. I will be peaceful if I am admired, chosen, secure, comfortable, and understood. But life does not always meet those conditions, so peace keeps getting delayed. The Buddhist path gently removes some of those conditions. It teaches you to come back to the breath even when people misunderstand you, to practice kindness even when life moves slowly, to observe your thoughts even when fear speaks loudly, to remain present even when the future remains unclear. This is not easy, but it is real training. A dream life may give you what you want. Your current life may teach you who you are when you do not get it yet. That is a deeper lesson. It is easy to feel generous when life gives abundantly. It is harder to remain open-hearted when you feel unseen. It is easy to trust when everything works out quickly. It is harder to trust when the road is slow. It is easy to speak of patience when nothing tests you. It is harder to practice patience when your heart is tired of waiting. This is why your current life is not spiritually meaningless. It is where your practice becomes real. Buddhism is not only understood in quiet rooms, peaceful mornings, or perfect retreats. It is practiced in traffic, in disappointment, in waiting seasons, in difficult conversations, in loneliness, in ordinary chores, in moments when the mind wants to run away from what is here. The present life is the monastery, not because it is calm all the time, but because it keeps offering chances to awaken. Every irritation becomes a chance to notice reactivity. Every delay becomes a chance to notice impatience. Every comparison becomes a chance to return to your own path. Every fear becomes a chance to practice awareness. Every ordinary day becomes a chance to stop treating life as something that only begins later. This changes the meaning of daily life. The dishes are no longer just dishes. They become a practice in attention. The quiet walk is no longer just a walk. It becomes a return to the body. The difficult feeling is no longer just an obstacle. It becomes an invitation to meet yourself honestly. The unfinished season is no longer proof that life has failed. It becomes ground for patience, humility, and trust. This is how ordinary life becomes spiritual, not by becoming perfect, but by being met consciously. Many people want a life that removes all discomfort. But discomfort is often where unconscious patterns become visible. When everything is easy, the hidden self can remain hidden. When something does not go your way, what lives inside you begins to speak. Anger may appear, fear may appear, envy may appear, control may appear, self-doubt may appear. These things are not pleasant, but they are useful when seen with compassion. They show where freedom is still needed. Your dream life may not reveal these things as clearly because it might keep you comfortable. Comfort can be beautiful, but comfort does not always awaken the deepest awareness. Sometimes comfort lets the ego sleep. Difficulty shakes the ego awake. Again, this does not mean you should seek suffering. It means that when suffering comes, you do not have to treat it as wasted. You can ask, what is this showing me? Where am I clinging? What am I believing? What am I afraid to feel? How can I meet this with more wisdom? These questions turn life into practice, and practice turns pain into a teacher. Not instantly, not neatly, but gradually. There is also something important about the dream life itself. Sometimes what you call your dream life is not really your soul's deepest desire. Sometimes it is a picture built from fear, comparison, pressure, or the need to prove yourself. You may think you want a certain future because it would bring peace. But underneath what you really want may be safety, belonging, freedom, rest, love, dignity, or self-acceptance. The dream is not always the final desire. It is often a symbol of a deeper hunger. Your current life may be teaching you to recognize that hunger directly. Maybe you do not only want success. Maybe you want to stop feeling invisible. Maybe you do not only want a relationship. Maybe you want to feel worthy of love. Maybe you do not only want money. Maybe you want to feel safe in your own body and future. Maybe you do not only want a different life. Maybe you want relief from the constant feeling that this life is not enough. When you see the deeper hunger clearly, you stop chasing blindly. You begin relating to yourself more honestly. This is very important because many people reach the dream and still feel empty. They finally get what they thought would complete them, but the inner wound remains untouched. The outside changed, but the inside stayed hungry. Buddhism invites you to go deeper than appearance. It asks you to understand desire, not only obey it. Desire is not always bad, but unconscious desire can become suffering. It keeps saying, more, elsewhere, later, different. And if you follow it without awareness, you may spend your whole life running towards something that never fully satisfies the heart. Your current life interrupts that running. It asks you to sit down for a moment and look honestly. What are you really seeking? What do you believe your dream life will finally prove? That you are lovable, that you are safe, that you matter, that you did not waste your life, that others were wrong about you? These are tender questions. They should be held gently, but they matter because they reveal how much emotional weight the dream life may be carrying. Sometimes the dream life becomes a burden because you expect it to rescue you from yourself. But no future can fully rescue a person who has not learned how to be present with their own heart. This is why the current life, even when imperfect, may be offering the deeper rescue. It may be teaching you how to stop running from yourself, how to sit with your own fear, how to offer kindness to your own unfinished places, how to live without waiting for external life to finally declare you worthy. That is not a small lesson. That is liberation beginning quietly. Many people resist their current life because they believe acceptance means giving up. But acceptance in Buddhism does not mean surrendering your growth. It means seeing clearly where you are before taking the next step. You cannot walk wisely from a place you refuse to acknowledge. If you hate your current life completely, you may move from desperation instead of wisdom. You may chase escape instead of truth. You may make choices only to avoid discomfort, not because they align with your deeper path. Acceptance creates clearer movement. When you accept where you are, you stop wasting energy arguing with reality. That energy becomes available for wise action. You can still change. You can still grow. You can still build. But now you move from presence instead of panic. This is the difference between running away from your life and walking forward from it. Running away carries fear. Walking forward carries awareness. Your current life may be teaching you this difference. It may be showing you that transformation does not require hatred of where you are. You can want change without despising the present. You can dream without abandoning today. You can build a better future without treating your current self like an enemy. This is compassion in action, and compassion is one of the deepest Buddhist medicines. Many people believe they will become kind to themselves after life improves, but kindness is needed most before life improves. During the messy part, during the uncertain part, during the ordinary part, during the season when there is no applause, the dream life may be easier to love. The current life teaches you how to love without perfect conditions, and that kind of love is stronger. It is easy to love yourself when you feel successful. But can you treat yourself gently when you feel behind? It is easy to feel grateful when life is beautiful. But can you notice one small blessing during a hard day? It is easy to trust when the answer is clear. But can you keep breathing when the answer is not here yet? These are the questions that shape the soul. Your current life may also be teaching you how to become less dependent on fantasy. Fantasy can comfort temporarily, but it can also become an escape from participation. You may spend so much time dreaming about a better life that you stop caring for the life you actually have. But the life you actually have still needs your attention. Your body still needs rest. Your space still needs care. Your relationships still need presence. Your mind still needs gentleness. Your daily habits still shape your future. Dreaming without tending to the present becomes another form of absence. Buddhism always returns you to direct life because direct life is where karma is created. The small choices you make today become the conditions of tomorrow. How you speak today matters. How you think today matters. How you respond today matters. How you care for yourself today matters. Your dream life is not built by rejecting today. It is built through how consciously you meet today. This makes the present moment powerful, not glamorous, powerful, because every moment contains seeds, a seed of patience, a seed of resentment, a seed of awareness, a seed of avoidance, a seed of kindness, a seed of fear. Karma is not only some distant force, it is also the way repeated actions shape the mind and life over time. Your current life is the field where these seeds are planted. So the question becomes, what are you planting while waiting for the dream? Are you planting bitterness because life has not arrived yet? Are you planting comparison because others seem ahead? Are you planting self-hatred because your path looks different? Or are you planting steadiness, compassion, presence, and courage? This matters deeply, because who you become while waiting often determines how you will receive what comes later. If your dream life arrived tomorrow but your mind remained full of fear, you might not enjoy it. You might worry about losing it, compare it to someone else's, demand more immediately, feel unworthy of it. Use it to prove yourself instead of experience it with gratitude. This is why preparation of the heart matters. Sometimes the current life is not blocking your dream life. It is preparing you to hold it with wisdom. It may be teaching you patience so success does not make you arrogant. Teaching simplicity so abundance does not make you empty. Teaching compassion so love does not become possession. Teaching presence so achievement does not become another restless chase. Teaching humility so growth does not turn into ego. These lessons are not always comfortable, but they are protective. There are blessings that require inner space before they can be received peacefully. And sometimes life delays certain things because the inner vessel is still being shaped. Again, this does not mean every delay has a neat explanation. Life is complex. Pain is real. But it does mean your current life may contain hidden preparation even when the mind cannot fully understand it. This perspective reduces resentment. Instead of constantly asking, "Why am I not there yet?" you begin asking, "What can I learn here that will help me walk more wisely there?" That question changes everything. It gives dignity to the current season. It turns ordinary life into training. It turns waiting into practice. It turns imperfection into a teacher. And perhaps most importantly, it helps you stop treating your present self as someone who must be escaped. You do not need to escape yourself to become whole. You need to return to yourself with more honesty and compassion. That return can begin right here, inside the life that feels unfinished, inside the day that feels ordinary, inside the body that feels tired, inside the questions that remain unanswered, inside the dream that has not yet arrived. This is where awakening begins. Not in some perfect future where everything finally makes sense, but in the exact place where you learn to stop rejecting your life long enough to actually live it. Tonight, perhaps you can look at your current life with softer eyes, not as a punishment, not as a failure, not as proof that you are behind, but as a teacher that may be shaping patience, depth, courage, humility, and presence in ways comfort never could. Your dream life may still come. You may still grow, heal, build, love, succeed, and become more fully yourself. But do not miss the teachings hidden here. Do not miss the quiet wisdom of this unfinished chapter. Do not miss the strength being formed in ordinary days. Do not miss the compassion growing through struggle. Do not miss the sacredness of the life that is already breathing beside you, because the life you are living now may be teaching what your dream life cannot. And if you can receive its lessons without hatred, without rushing, without abandoning yourself, then even this imperfect moment becomes part of your awakening. After beginning to see your current life as a teacher instead of only a problem, another quiet realization starts appearing beneath the surface. Much of your fear may not actually be about the present moment at all. Much of it may come from constantly trying to protect a future version of yourself that does not even exist yet. A version that must never fail, never suffer, never be rejected, never lose control. And the exhausting part is that you may be sacrificing your real life now in order to defend that imagined future self from pain that has not happened. There is a strange sadness in the way many people live. They move through life carrying an invisible responsibility to protect a future version of themselves at all costs. Every decision becomes filtered through fear. Every risk becomes dangerous. Every uncertain step becomes emotionally heavy because the mind keeps whispering, "What if this ruins your future? What if you regret this? What if this hurts the person you are trying to become?" And slowly, the future self becomes more important than the living person breathing here now. This happens so quietly that most people never notice it. They think they are simply being responsible, careful, mature, strategic. But underneath that carefulness is often deep fear. Fear of pain, fear of failure, fear of becoming someone disappointed, ashamed, lonely, unsuccessful, abandoned, or broken. So the mind begins building an imaginary future self that must be protected constantly. Protected from embarrassment, protected from uncertainty, protected from emotional risk, protected from loss, protected from discomfort. And because of this constant protection, life starts becoming smaller and smaller. The heart closes before love can deepen. Dreams are abandoned before failure becomes possible. Truth remains unspoken because rejection feels too dangerous. People stay inside familiar suffering because unknown change feels threatening to the future self they are trying to preserve. But Buddhism asks a very important question. Who is this future self you are trying so hard to protect? Right now, that person does not fully exist yet. The future self is partly imagination, partly projection, partly fear. Of course, the future matters. Buddhism does not teach recklessness or irresponsibility. Caring about tomorrow is natural. Wise preparation matters. Healthy planning matters. But there is a difference between caring for the future wisely and becoming psychologically imprisoned by it. Many people no longer know how to live because they are too busy trying to guarantee safety for a version of themselves that only exists in thought. And the painful irony is this: the more tightly they try to protect that imagined future self, the less alive they become in the present. Life becomes calculation instead of experience, defense instead of participation, avoidance instead of openness. The future self slowly turns into an emotional idol. Everything revolves around preserving it. The current moment becomes sacrificed constantly in service of this imagined future safety. A person does not rest because they fear falling behind later. They do not speak honestly because they fear future rejection. They do not slow down because they fear future failure. They do not allow vulnerability because they fear future heartbreak. They do not try because they fear future humiliation. The present self becomes emotionally neglected, while the future self receives all the protection. This creates deep exhaustion because the nervous system never fully relaxes. It constantly scans for threats against the future, and fear always finds more threats. What if this decision ruins everything? What if you make the wrong choice? What if you waste your life? What if people judge you? What if you lose what you built? The mind becomes obsessed with preventing future pain completely. But Buddhism teaches something profoundly freeing. Pain is part of human life. Loss is part of human life. Change is part of human life. Uncertainty is part of human life. Trying to create a future completely untouched by vulnerability is impossible. and the attempt itself creates suffering. This is why letting go becomes so important spiritually, not giving up on life, not abandoning wisdom, but releasing the impossible burden of guaranteeing a painless future identity. Many people are not actually living. They are managing risk emotionally every hour. They monitor themselves constantly, analyze themselves constantly, correct themselves constantly. They become afraid of mistakes because mistakes threaten the future self-image they are trying to preserve. But human beings grow through direct experience, not perfect control. A child learning to walk falls repeatedly. A heart learning to love risks pain repeatedly. A soul learning wisdom encounters confusion repeatedly. Life itself is messy, fluid, unpredictable. The future self you are trying to protect may never unfold exactly as imagined anyway. This sounds frightening at first, but it can also become deeply liberating, because once you stop worshipping a fixed future identity, you become more available to life as it actually unfolds. Many people secretly believe there is a final version of themselves they must eventually secure. A perfectly healed self, a perfectly successful self, a perfectly respected self, a perfectly safe self, and until they reach this imagined identity, they feel emotionally incomplete. But Buddhism gently dissolves this illusion. The self itself is constantly changing. The person you were 5 years ago no longer fully exists. The person you will become 5 years from now is still unfolding. Identity is not fixed stone. It is flowing process. This realization changes how you relate to fear, because now you stop treating the future self as something fragile that must be perfectly preserved forever. Instead, you begin trusting your ability to adapt, grow, and meet life as it changes. This trust matters deeply. Without it, the mind becomes rigid, and rigidity creates suffering. Rigid people fear uncertainty intensely because uncertainty threatens their mental picture of who they must become. Flexible people suffer less because they allow life to shape them gradually instead of forcing reality to obey fixed identity expectations. This flexibility is one reason Buddhist wisdom feels so spacious emotionally. It allows becoming, changing, evolving. It does not demand that life freeze into one permanent identity forever. There is also something deeply exhausting about constantly trying to protect future emotional comfort. People avoid difficult conversations because they fear future discomfort, avoid boundaries because they fear future conflict, avoid truth because they fear future consequences, avoid growth because they fear future failure. But avoiding temporary discomfort often creates deeper suffering later. The future self becomes burdened by all the things the present self was too afraid to face honestly. This is important to understand. Trying to protect yourself from all pain often creates more pain, not less. Because avoidance accumulates, unspoken truth accumulates, unlived life accumulates, suppressed emotion accumulates, and eventually the soul becomes heavy with all the things fear prevented you from experiencing honestly. Buddhism invites another way of living, not reckless abandonment, not careless impulsiveness, but courageous presence. The willingness to live truthfully without demanding guarantees first. This kind of living feels vulnerable because vulnerability is unavoidable in real life. Love is vulnerable. Creativity is vulnerable. Authenticity is vulnerable. Hope itself is vulnerable. Fear wants certainty before participation, but certainty rarely arrives fully. So fearful people postpone life endlessly. I will open my heart later. I will pursue the dream later. I will rest later. I will live honestly later. But later keeps moving. And meanwhile, the present self remains emotionally abandoned. This abandonment becomes one of the deepest hidden wounds in modern life. People constantly sacrifice themselves today in service of future security tomorrow. The body becomes exhausted. The nervous system becomes overwhelmed. Joy disappears. Presence disappears. Life becomes endless preparation instead of experience. But what if the future self does not need endless protection? What if the future self mostly needs compassion instead? Compassion changes everything. Compassion says, you are allowed to be unfinished. You are allowed to make mistakes. You are allowed to change direction. You are allowed to not know everything yet. You are allowed to be human. This softens the crushing pressure many people carry internally. Because much anxiety comes from impossible emotional expectations placed on the future. The mind says, you must never fail. You must not disappoint people. You must always make the perfect decision. You must secure your future completely. But no human being can carry such pressure peacefully. Eventually, something breaks emotionally. This is why Buddhist compassion is not weakness. It is wisdom. Wisdom understands that control is limited, that perfection is impossible, that life unfolds unpredictably, and that trying to dominate every possible future outcome destroys peace in the present. Many people are afraid to let go of the future self because they think letting go means becoming careless or directionless. But letting go in Buddhism does not mean apathy. It means releasing unhealthy attachment. You can still have goals without worshipping them emotionally. You can still plan without panicking. You can still care about tomorrow without sacrificing your entire present life to fear. This balance creates freedom, because now the future matters, but it no longer owns you completely. There is also deep healing in realizing that the future self will not need perfection from you. The future version of you will likely need tenderness more than flawless control. One day, your future self may look back not wishing you had been more perfect, but wishing you had been more present, more alive, more honest, more willing to rest, more willing to love, more willing to trust life instead of constantly fearing it. Many people imagine the future self as a harsh judge evaluating every mistake, but often the future self becomes softer with wisdom. Older people frequently realize they spent too much energy worrying about things that mattered far less than they once believed. Too much fear, too much pressure, too much self-judgment, too much postponement of joy. The Buddhist path helps soften this before life forces the lesson painfully. It teaches you now that existence is already impermanent. Everything changes. Bodies change. Relationships change. Identities change. Circumstances change. Trying to create permanent emotional safety inside an impermanent world creates tension constantly. But learning how to flow with impermanence creates peace. A river survives because it moves, not because it freezes itself solid. The future self you are trying to protect is not fixed anyway. That person will continue changing through experiences you cannot fully predict now. And this is not failure, it is life. The ego fears change because change threatens identity. But the soul often grows through precisely the experiences the ego tried hardest to avoid. Heartbreak can deepen compassion. Failure can deepen humility. Uncertainty can deepen trust. Loneliness can deepen self-awareness. This does not mean suffering should be sought intentionally, but it does mean the future self does not need to be protected from every uncomfortable experience in order to become whole. Sometimes discomfort becomes part of awakening itself. There is another hidden problem with overprotecting the future self. It disconnects you from gratitude, because the mind becomes so focused on securing tomorrow that it stops appreciating today. Meals become rushed, conversations become distracted, rest becomes guilt, beauty becomes overlooked. Everything becomes about future optimization instead of present aliveness. But life is happening now, not only in the imagined future version of yourself, The current self deserves attention too. The current body deserves rest too. The current heart deserves kindness too. The current moment deserves presence too. This realization creates enormous emotional relief, because now you stop treating the present merely as raw material for future achievement. The present becomes worthy in itself. Breathing becomes enough sometimes. Sitting quietly becomes enough sometimes. Existing without constant self-improvement becomes enough sometimes. This interrupts the endless striving culture that dominates modern life. People are constantly taught to optimize themselves endlessly, become better, smarter, more successful, more productive, more attractive, more disciplined. And while growth itself is not wrong, endless self-optimization can quietly become self-rejection. The message becomes, who you are now is not enough. This creates chronic anxiety around the future self. The mind constantly tries to repair, improve, and secure identity. But Buddhism points toward another truth. You are already worthy of compassion before becoming extraordinary. You are already human before proving yourself. You are already alive before achieving perfection. This does not eliminate growth. It simply removes hatred from the process. Growth rooted in self-hatred creates suffering. Growth rooted in awareness creates peace. Many people also cling tightly to the future self because they fear regret. They want to make perfect decisions so future pain can be avoided completely. But perfection is impossible. Every life contains uncertainty. Every path contains trade-offs. No decision guarantees complete emotional safety forever. Once this is accepted deeply, enormous pressure releases. You stop demanding impossible certainty before moving forward. You stop believing every choice must eliminate all future discomfort. You begin trusting your ability to adapt instead. Adaptability is far more valuable than imagined perfect control. Life constantly changes. Flexible hearts survive better than rigid ones. This is why Buddhist wisdom values non-attachment, not because caring is wrong, but because clinging creates suffering. The tighter you cling to a fixed future identity, the more frightening change becomes. But when identity softens, life flows more naturally. You stop needing every chapter to preserve a specific self-image. You become more open to transformation, more open to learning, more open to surprise. This openness restores aliveness, and aliveness matters more than perfect psychological protection. Fear says, protect yourself completely. Wisdom says, live truthfully, even though life remains uncertain. This difference changes everything, because one path creates endless contraction, the other creates freedom. Tonight, perhaps you can gently notice how much energy has been spent protecting a future version of yourself. The future version that must never fail, never suffer, never disappoint, never feel lost. And perhaps you can begin softening around that burden, not abandoning responsibility, not abandoning dreams, but releasing the impossible demand to secure a perfectly painless future identity. You do not need to become invulnerable to deserve peace. You do not need every decision guaranteed before living honestly. You do not need to protect yourself from all uncertainty before allowing yourself rest. The future self will continue unfolding, changing, learning, becoming. And perhaps what that future self will need most from you is not endless fear and control. Perhaps it will need the courage you practice today, the compassion you offer yourself today, the honesty you allow today, the presence you return to today. Life is not asking you to perfectly preserve a future identity. Life is asking you to fully inhabit this living moment before it disappears. And maybe true peace begins the moment you stop sacrificing your real life now for a future self that only exists inside fear. After slowly loosening the exhausting grip on the future self, something softer begins to emerge inside the heart. The pressure to control every outcome starts weakening. The need to predict every possibility starts fading slightly. And beneath all that noise, something incredibly simple begins, waiting quietly for your attention. Your breath, not tomorrow, not the identity you are trying to become, not the fear of what may happen, just this breath entering and leaving the body. And hidden inside this small, ordinary act is a freedom many people spend their entire lives searching for. There is something deeply healing about realizing that life does not have to be carried all at once. Most people move through existence as if they must emotionally solve their entire future before they are allowed to relax. They carry tomorrow in their chest constantly, next year, next decade, every possibility, every fear, every unfinished responsibility. And because of this, the nervous system never truly rests. The mind keeps racing ahead while the body struggles to keep up. But breathing changes this. Breathing brings life back down to human size. One inhale, one exhale, one moment. This sounds almost too simple at first. The mind wants more complicated answers. It wants grand solutions, dramatic transformations, complete certainty. But Buddhism often returns to very simple things because simple things reconnect people with reality. And reality is always happening now, not later. Not after you finally become perfect. Not after every fear disappears. Now. The breath becomes sacred because it anchors awareness inside direct experience instead of mental projection. Fear almost always lives somewhere else, in tomorrow, in imagined outcomes, in future pain. But breathing always happens here. This is why anxious people often breathe shallowly without realizing it. The mind leaves the present so frequently that the body tightens automatically. The chest contracts. The jaw hardens. The nervous system prepares for danger that may not even exist. And slowly the body forgets what safety feels like. Many people live this way for years, always rushing, always preparing, always anticipating. Even peaceful moments become interrupted by mental movement. A quiet evening cannot simply be a quiet evening. The mind turns it into planning, comparing, predicting, worrying, fixing. The body sits in one place while the mind runs endlessly through imagined futures. This constant running creates enormous exhaustion, not only mental exhaustion, spiritual exhaustion. The soul becomes tired of living everywhere except the present moment. This is why breathing becomes more than physical survival. It becomes a return, a doorway back into reality itself. When you truly feel one breath completely, something changes. The mind slows slightly, the body softens slightly. Attention gathers instead of scattering everywhere, and for a moment, life no longer feels impossible to carry, because you are no longer trying to carry all of it. Only this breath, only this moment. This is the hidden freedom. Most suffering grows larger because the mind combines too much at once. Yesterday's regrets, tomorrow's fears, today's uncertainty, old wounds, future predictions. Everything collapses together inside the nervous system until the person feels overwhelmed by life itself. But life itself is not arriving all at once. Only this moment is arriving. Only this breath is here now. Buddhism teaches this repeatedly because the human mind constantly forgets it. The mind prefers abstraction. It turns life into giant emotional concepts. My entire future, my whole identity, my entire purpose, my complete healing. And these enormous mental constructions become emotionally crushing. But breathing interrupts abstraction. Breathing says, here, now, this inhale, this exhale, this body still alive, this moment not yet destroyed by fear. Many people are secretly terrified of slowing down because they fear what they will feel underneath all their mental movement. Constant thinking becomes distraction from direct emotional contact. If they stop rushing mentally, they may finally notice grief, loneliness, exhaustion, fear, sadness. So the mind keeps moving endlessly, but movement without awareness does not heal pain. It only delays contact with it. Breathing creates gentle contact, not violent confrontation, gentle contact. You begin noticing the body honestly, the tension, the fatigue, the ache inside the chest, the nervous system asking quietly for rest. And this noticing itself becomes compassionate, because many people abandon themselves emotionally for years. They override exhaustion constantly, ignore fear constantly, suppress sadness constantly. The body keeps carrying what the conscious mind refuses to slow down long enough to feel. But the breath patiently waits, always available, always returning, no matter how lost the mind becomes. This is why Buddhist meditation is often centered around breathing. Not because breathing is magical in some dramatic way, but because it reconnects awareness with reality gently and repeatedly. The breath does not demand perfection. It simply invites return, again and again and again. The mind wanders into fear, return to breath. The mind wanders into future disaster, return to breath. The mind wanders into shame, return to breath. This repeated returning slowly retrains the nervous system away from chronic panic. Over time, the body begins learning that it does not need to live permanently braced against life. This learning changes emotional experience profoundly, because most people think freedom means controlling external circumstances completely. But external life will always contain uncertainty. People change, bodies change, circumstances shift, plans fail, seasons transform. Trying to secure permanent external certainty creates endless suffering, but inner freedom grows differently. Inner freedom grows through the ability to remain present, even while life remains imperfect. Breathing teaches this directly. The breath continues even during uncertainty, even during grief, even during confusion, even during unfinished seasons. This continuity becomes deeply stabilizing. The breath quietly reminds you, you are still here. You are still alive. This moment can still be met. There is tremendous wisdom hidden inside this simplicity. One breath at a time means you stop demanding that the nervous system survive the entire future immediately. Many anxious minds unconsciously try to emotionally survive every possible future outcome all at once. What if I fail? What if I lose them? What if everything changes? What if life becomes too painful? The nervous system collapses under this imagined weight. But breathing reduces existence back into manageable reality. Not forever, not next year, just now. Can you meet this breath? Usually the answer is yes, even during difficult moments. This creates emotional spaciousness, and spaciousness interrupts panic. Panic thrives when the mind feels trapped inside enormous imagined futures. Presence softens this by shrinking attention back to what is directly here. This is one reason nature often feels healing. Nature exists one moment at a time naturally. Trees are not mentally rehearsing next month constantly. Rivers are not catastrophizing tomorrow endlessly. Birds are not comparing their entire life path to other birds. Nature moves directly, simply, presently. Human beings suffer partly because they leave direct life so often mentally. The breath returns you to the simplicity nature already understands. This simplicity is not stupidity, it is clarity. Clarity sees that this moment alone already contains enough to meet. Not every future possibility needs to be emotionally solved tonight. This realization softens the mind greatly. There is also hidden freedom in understanding that breathing happens automatically. Most people spend enormous energy trying to control everything, Control thoughts, control outcomes, control emotions, control how others see them, control the future. But breathing reminds you that life itself is already carrying you in countless unseen ways. The heart beats without conscious effort. The lungs continue working, the body keeps living. Existence itself contains support already. This recognition weakens the illusion that you alone must hold the entire universe together through mental effort. Many people secretly believe constant worrying is responsible behavior. They fear that if they stop mentally controlling life for one moment, everything will collapse. But life has always contained countless things beyond personal control. The breath teaches surrender gently, not hopeless surrender, not passive surrender, but trusting participation instead of endless gripping. The inhale arrives, the exhale leaves. Neither can be held forever. This becomes a metaphor for existence itself. Everything moves, everything changes, everything flows. Trying to hold tightly to every moment creates suffering. Breathing teaches release naturally. You inhale fully, then release, again and again. This rhythm mirrors healthy emotional living. Feel fully, release gently, experience honestly. Do not cling permanently. The fearful mind struggles with release because it believes gripping creates safety. But gripping creates tension, and tension eventually exhausts the soul. One breath at a time softens gripping. It reminds you that life can still unfold without constant mental force. This becomes especially important during painful seasons. When overwhelmed, people often try solving their entire life immediately. They demand complete clarity during moments of emotional exhaustion, but exhausted minds rarely find wisdom through force. Sometimes the wisest thing possible is simply breathing through the next moment. Not because the problem disappears, but because survival itself becomes more grounded. Trauma therapists often teach breathing because trauma pulls people away from present safety and into past or future fear. The nervous system stops distinguishing between memory, imagination, and current reality. Breathing restores orientation. Here, now, this room, this body, this moment survived. Buddhism understood this long before modern psychology fully explained it scientifically. Presence heals fragmentation. The breath reunifies scattered attention. This is why mindful breathing often brings unexpected emotion to the surface. Once the nervous system slows slightly, buried feelings emerge naturally. Grief, fatigue, tenderness, long-suppressed sadness. Many people begin crying during stillness, not because something is wrong, but because the body finally feels safe enough to soften. Softening is not weakness, it is release. A nervous system permanently armored cannot experience deep peace. Breathing gently loosens armor over time. This creates emotional honesty. You begin recognizing how tired you actually are, how much pressure you carry, how often fear controls attention, how rarely you fully arrive inside your own life. These realizations can feel painful initially, but they are also freeing, because awareness allows transformation. Without awareness, patterns remain automatic. Many people spend decades living almost entirely from unconscious fear responses, reacting automatically, worrying automatically, tightening automatically. But one conscious breath interrupts automation. One conscious breath creates choice. You notice tension instead of blindly becoming tension. You notice fear instead of fully becoming fear. You notice thought instead of drowning inside thought. This witnessing awareness is central to Buddhist freedom. You are not every passing mental storm. You are the awareness capable of observing storms without becoming completely lost inside them. Breathing strengthens this witnessing gently, not through force, through practice. Slowly, the mind learns how to stay present longer, not perfectly. Human minds wander naturally, but awareness returns more quickly, and each return strengthens inner steadiness. There is also something deeply humbling about realizing how little is actually required for this moment. One breath, a little awareness, a little softness. The mind constantly complicates existence. It says peace must be earned through achievement, certainty, perfection, or complete understanding. But breathing reveals that peace often begins far more simply. A relaxed jaw, a slower inhale, a moment of non-resistance, a willingness to stop mentally running for a few seconds. These tiny moments accumulate, and gradually the nervous system begins trusting life more. Not blindly, not foolishly, but experientially. You survive uncertainty. You survive incomplete answers. You survive emotional waves, and the breath remains through all of it. This continuity becomes deeply comforting. Many spiritual traditions call breath sacred because it connects the invisible and visible parts of existence. You cannot see breath directly, yet life depends on it completely. In the same way, much of what sustains human beings remains invisible. Love, presence, awareness, compassion, stillness. These things cannot always be measured externally, yet they shape emotional reality profoundly. Modern culture often ignores these invisible dimensions because it worships productivity and visible achievement constantly. But breathing cannot be rushed. Presence cannot be mass-produced. Inner peace cannot be downloaded instantly. These things unfold slowly through attention. This is why one conscious breath can become more healing than hours of anxious thinking. Thinking often multiplies suffering. Presence interrupts multiplication. The breath brings you back to what is directly alive. Right now, not the imagined future self, not the feared disaster, not the unfinished identity, just this living moment. This is where freedom hides, not in total control, not in perfect certainty, but in the ability to fully arrive here without demanding that life become different first. One breath at a time teaches trust gradually. Trust that this moment can be met. Trust that uncertainty is survivable. Trust that the nervous system does not need permanent emergency mode. Trust that peace is possible even inside unfinished life. And perhaps most importantly, trust that you do not need to carry existence all at once. Tonight, perhaps you can stop trying to solve your entire future before sleeping. Perhaps the next breath is enough for now. Perhaps the body deserves rest even while some questions remain unanswered. Perhaps life does not need to. Reveal the entire path tonight. Perhaps peace begins not when everything becomes certain, but when you finally stop abandoning this moment for all the imagined moments ahead. Feel the inhale gently entering. Feel the exhale softly leaving. Nothing dramatic, nothing forced. Just life continuing quietly. One breath, then another, and another. This is how human beings survive. This is how the nervous system softens. This is how fear loosens. This is how reality returns, one breath at a time. Tonight, you were reminded of something the fearful mind keeps trying to make you forget. Life was never meant to be controlled perfectly before it could be lived peacefully. The future does not need to explain itself completely before you are allowed to breathe. You do not need every answer before rest. You do not need perfect certainty before trust. And you do not need to become fearless before life becomes meaningful. Little by little, you learned how fear creates imagined disasters, how attachment to safety creates suffering, how the mind turns uncertainty into prophecy, and how true peace begins when you return to what is real instead of what the mind keeps predicting. You saw that your current life is not a punishment, but a teacher, that slow seasons still carry wisdom, that healing is not instant, that the breath itself can become a quiet refuge when the world feels heavy, Most importantly, you discovered that peace is not found by escaping life, but by softening enough to meet it honestly, one breath at a time. So tonight, let the mind rest. Let tomorrow arrive when it arrives. Let the future unfold without forcing it to confess all its secrets tonight. The path beneath your feet is still carrying you, even when you cannot yet see the whole road ahead. And before you sleep, I want you to leave one quiet word in the comments. I trust. Let that word become a promise to yourself that you will stop abandoning the life you are living for the life you are fearing. If this journey brought even a little calm to your heart, subscribe to the channel and join us again for more Buddhist teachings that help the mind grow quieter, softer, and free. Until next time, breathe gently, trust slowly, and rest deeply.